Good morning. Hi, my name is Shannon Perry. I'm the city's Chief Sustainability Officer, and I'm here this morning to welcome you to our Circular SoCal event. Before we get started, I wanted to just take a moment to welcome you to the city of Santa Monica. And for those of you who have traveled from New York or Colorado or Washington, I wanted to just take a moment to tell you where you are. So you are in the city of Santa Monica. We are an 8.3 square mile city. You're surrounded on 3 sides by the city of Los Angeles, on the 4th side by the beautiful Santa Monica Bay. The Santa Monica Mountains are to the north, and you are in the county of Los Angeles. You are on Tongva land, and you are here in the Santa Monica, in the Annenberg Community Beach House. This is the only publicly accessible beach house on the west coast of the United States, and we're really proud to make this beautiful facility open to the public. You are here as part of our September sustainability events. Why do we have September sustainability events? It's because the city of Santa Monica is committed to modeling the basic tenet that Earth Day is every day. We all love Earth Day. We love the opportunity to celebrate in the spring, to celebrate civic engagement and activism and a celebration of environment and place. But we also know that actions and intentions that demonstrate that economic vitality, social equity, and environmental protection are mutually dependent. Those actions, and more importantly, those outcomes, need to be committed to in daily action each and every day. So here we are, almost 6 months after Earth Day, and we are celebrating Sustainable September, which I have to be honest, now moves into October. There's just too many good things to talk about, and too many smart, creative, innovative, observant people to engage around this topic. What I want you to know about Santa Monica: we are committed to modeling this relationship that I just mentioned: economic vitality, social equity, environmental protection. These 3 things are not only mutually dependent, they are the work of cities, and they are the outcomes that our actions drive us towards. Our efforts to model best practices in this space are tied to 3 primary goals: water self-sufficiency, zero waste, and carbon neutrality. As you can imagine, circularity, rethinking design, process, and waste are essential to us achieving any of these goals. So we are immensely grateful that you have decided to share your time and talent with us today, and we hope that you find today both informational and inspiring as we collectively work towards a more sustainable future by making decisions today. In that spirit, my opportunity today is to introduce to you our mayor, Lana Negretti, our fearless leader and strong sustainability advocate.
I hope you're not disappointed that that lady didn't show up. Not only was that pre-chemo, but there's a lot of editing going on there. I don't think I've ever had that much hair, but anyways, I have to get a new picture up there. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Santa Monica, and thank you so much for joining us. We always like to bring out the sun and just the right amount of clouds, so I hope you approve of the scenery over here. I'm Mayor Lana Negrete, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome architects, designers, policymakers, champions, manufacturers, neighbors, and fellow thinkers, and honestly, people who are just badasses and get it done. You guys are doers. In Santa Monica, circularity isn't some abstract ideal. It's real progress, delivering cost savings, taxpayer value, and new economic opportunity from the smallest material innovation and how we build and govern. And honestly, in every department and every individual who works in our city, it's in their core to be good stewards of our environment. It's just part of living here in a beachside city. Santa Monica's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, which was adopted in 2019, is what guides the city's sustainability work and helps us know whether we are on track with our goals. As they are ambitious goals, we want to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 with an interim goal of 80% reduction from 1990 levels by 2030. And I'm really proud to share with you today that we've already achieved a 54% reduction in carbon emissions since the CAAP was adopted, and you can clap for that if you want. This was made possible by bold commitments made over 30 years ago and with ongoing city council, and honestly, it's our amazing city staff and community member engagement to measure and improve our progress towards this goal. So how does this relate to us today? Well, waste is another of the important pillars on our road to sustainability. We're working to extend circularity across the city, from operational waste practices to construction and demolition, or C&D material recycling. As in many areas of sustainability, Santa Monica has been on the forefront of delivering waste and organics. Today, SB 1383 requires all California cities to recycle organics, allowing people to commingle their food and green waste in the green bins. Santa Monica has been doing this since the 90s. We're truly trendsetters. We're like, been there, done that already. We were one of the first in the state to implement a 3-bin system, a pioneer in organics recycling. C&D waste includes materials such as concrete, asphalt, wood, metal, and drywall generated from building renovation and demolition projects. This waste accounts for 25 to 40% of the world's total waste in stream, but is highly reusable and recyclable. The City of Santa Monica's C&D waste diversion program requires 70% of all C&D materials to be diverted from a landfill, which sets the bar higher than the state's 2022 Cal Green Building Code requirements of 65% landfill diversion. We truly have people who are trying to make a mark, and I appreciate our city organization and the staff that we have that really sets the bar high for everybody. As a result, we are so proud to share that the city achieved an 87% C&D recycling rate and diverted more than 20 million pounds of C&D materials from landfills last fiscal year. It is exactly this leadership and these kinds of innovations that bring us here today. So let's lean into that spirit together this morning and afternoon and carry forward today's momentum toward a flourishing circular economy. Thank you for being here in our beautiful city, for sharing your heart, your expertise, and for helping Santa Monica lead the way. And with that, I'd like to bring up Heidi, our amazing architect from Santa Monica. Thank you.
Wow, okay. Clove, remind me next time not to follow the mayor. Thank you so much. Oliver apparently double booked and is unfortunately not able to be here with us, but he's here with us in spirit for sure. So hi everyone, so excited to be here with you today. For those of you that I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet, my name is Heidi Creighton. I'm a senior design manager with architecture services at the City of Santa Monica. And days like today and the leadership that we have, this is exactly why I joined the city. So the spark that started this event was an AIA LA event last November. It was actually my 4th day with the city. And we were there with the Senator Ben Allen and Amber and Soham, and Will and I were in the room, and sustainability and circularity came up. And so that sparked a follow-up call, and lots more calls and planning, and here we are today. So I'm so thrilled to be here with all of you today. So much, as the mayor just mentioned, we have so much incredible passion and knowledge and leadership in this room. So I'm so excited to hear from our incredible panelists, and then also too for our discussions and to hear all of your great thoughts about what we can do to continue to move the needle. I just wanted to, everyone from the City of Santa Monica, could you all just raise your hand, wave it high? Awesome. So I encourage all of you, please go speak to city staff and engage with them and ask them what they're doing around circularity and how you can help them meet their goals. I also just huge thank you to Shannon Perry and the Office of Sustainability and Environment for providing us with this gorgeous space. This is the best event space ever, best view, and they're also providing all the food, so thank you so much, OSE. And also too, just quick thank you to Rick Valte, our Director of Public Works, and Amelia Feichner, our City Architect, for supporting and letting us pull off this event. Also just a quick shout out to Yvonne Young. Where are you, Yvonne? She's our resource recovery and recycling manager. So she and her team are focused on our zero waste goals for the city and keeping Santa Monica at the forefront. And a lot of the stats that you just heard from the mayor was from Yvonne and her great team. Can we switch to the agenda? So you've seen this, but we're in our opening and welcome. We've got three incredible panels, so I'll be brief so we can get to those panels. Those will each be a little bit under an hour, so we can have a quick break in between panels, and then we've got about an hour of content creation and ideation. We've got facilitators throughout the room, and then we'll do quick kind of closing remarks, and then you'll have the last hour just to kind of enjoy some more food and networking and enjoy the views. So my invitation to all of you today and why we're all here. So we're here today as the built environment is humanity's largest material endeavor and its greatest opportunity. A circular economy transforms buildings and infrastructure from a source of waste and emissions into engines of regeneration, where every material is designed to stay and play, every structure gives more than it takes, and cities become living systems that restore rather than deplete the world around them. So the ask is to dream boldly with us today, and really think about these questions as you hear the panels and throughout the discussions later today. How do we move circularity forward locally? How do we build that regional capacity that we need? How do we advocate effectively, descope the risks, and innovate boldly? And how can Santa Monica and SoCal in general lead as a replicable model for communities worldwide? So please have those questions in your head. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Will Wright to talk about AIA LA's leadership in this space, and then Amber Rashane will follow him to talk about our Santa Monica Airport conversion project. So thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Will Wright. I work for the Los Angeles chapter of the American Institute of Architects, and it is our privilege and our honor to partner with Carbon Leadership Forum and the City of Santa Monica. Personally, I'm quite enthused by Santa Monica's leadership on this initiative, and as Heidi mentioned, the inception of this particular event started in a conversation that we had with Senator Ben Allen, and he may be joining us later this afternoon. Looking forward to him around 1 o'clock. But the big idea for today was proactive opportunities to create a circular economy marketplace. So during the discussions today with knowledge sharing, be thinking about like what proactive legislation do we need, what incentives do we need, what type of marketplace or market-based economies do we need to really sustain and nurture a circular economy. As the Director of Government and Public Affairs for AIA Los Angeles, we are committed to doing this with you, and we look forward to bringing everyone together in conversations like this as often as it takes until we do indeed have Southern California on the roadmap to a sustainable circular economy. With that, thank you, and Amber, we look forward to your participation, and I'm so delighted to be here near the beach, so thank you.
All right, here we go. So I have the distinct pleasure of leading the airport conversion project. Hopefully some of you have heard about it. I'm not going to talk ad nauseum about it. I'm going to direct you to our website because it has all of the information, but we're going to do a quick overview today and how it relates to the topic that we're discussing today in circularity. So the Santa Monica Airport, hopefully my head is not in the way, there we go, is in the southeast corner of Santa Monica. It is about 192 acres, and the city owns all of it. We are allowed to close it. We are going to close it December 31st of 2028. So just over 3 years from now, we get this amazing resource back to be open to the public for the first time in more than 100 years. Santa Monica has a very deep aviation history that we are very proud of, but it is also a lot of space that gets used by a few amount of people. And so we're really excited to take this back and really weave this parcel that's almost 4% of our total land area back into the fabric of Santa Monica. So, there we go. We are also, it is a regional context, right? This is the largest parcel on the west side of Los Angeles. When you look at this map and try and find all of the green dots, there are not a lot of them. And that's part of the problem, right? Santa Monica is a park-poor city. We are 1.4 acres per 1,000 residents. The county average is 3.3. And West Los Angeles, for those of you in the Mar Vista, Venice, Palms area, it's at 0.5. So this whole area really needs some help, right? We've got Kenneth Hahn, we've got Griffith Park, we've got the Santa Monica Mountains around us. Those are very different types of places, and they're not in the urban context. And so we're really excited to get this property back into service for the most amount of community members. Next. So this is the site. As I mentioned, it's 192 acres. If you've ever tried to drive down Bundy or Centinela during rush hour, it's jammed there. And 23rd is on the west end. If you've ever been to the Cloverfield restaurant, which is actually really wonderful, it's on the south side. And then on the north side is the Santa Monica Business Park, if you've been there. And you can see Clover Park is nearby, and Airport Park, so that's kind of where we are. So it's really big. You can fit 3 Dodger stadiums with its parking. So when we talk about how big this site is, to try and contextualize it, right, it's really big, but it also, right, in the greater LA region, it's really small, right, as we saw in the regional context. So our charge is, we have a team, there's 5 of us that are actively working on it, along with a lot of city partners. We have a consultant who's doing a really great job. And we are looking at how do we reuse this? How can we bring this into the future? And today's context specifically, right, it is 80% impervious right now. It is asphalt, it is concrete, it is buildings, it is roofs, it is all sorts of things. There's not a lot of nature. It's only about 12% pervious. So anything that we can do is going to be a help. If you look at just the runway, it's about 35,000 cubic yards of material that if we were to pulverize and take it off and away, that would be thousands of truckloads. So how do we not do that, right? That's the tie-in to today, is what should we be doing, right? And as we talk through the panels and everything, that all of you are very smart and we can't wait to learn from you, what are good ideas around this? Because we'd like to do better. As Shannon's mentioned and Heidi's mentioned about our sustainability goals as a city. We also have a bunch of existing structures. Now, some of them are good, right? We've got actual office buildings, right? They might need some HVAC upgrades and things like that, but generally solid buildings that we can renovate. We also have a lot of hangars, not surprising, right? This is an active airport currently. What can those be reused for? How can we give them a new life without having to tear everything down? And then we also have some structures that are not so great, right? Airport, I think they call them aircraft covers. They're not even a hangar. But what can we do with that, right? It's a lot of corrugated metal. It's a lot of, wood sort of structures. they're real basic. But what can we do with them? Can we repurpose them, right? So we're working with our fire department and others, but we're really interested in what comes out of today for the next great ideas on what it should become. This project has 5 guiding principles. That is what you see at the top here. And we recognize that building out a park, right, or a project, right, whatever it's going to be, is going to take decades. And we want to start with the day 1. So we get this back on January 1st, 2029, which would be great to have a really big party, right, New Year's and all of those fun things. But how do you plan for January 2nd, right? What are we doing? How are we bringing this back to people? Can they just ride their bikes on the runways? That's probably the very first thing. And then how do we build up to that park and that final vision and all of those community aspirations and what this place can be and should be for all of our community members? And how do we build that in incrementally, keeping reuse and circularity at the forefront? So this is a little bit of what it looks like today. We've got some historic structures or historic monuments. This is a compass rose. It was painted by the 99s, which was Amelia Earhart's group. It's a group of women pilots. We also have shortened our runway. It used to be over a mile, and now it's about 3,500 feet. And where we've pulverized that runway, you actually get wildflowers in the spring, and it's really beautiful. And it's Mother Nature already coming back, which is really wonderful to see. And so we're deciding what we're going to do. And what we can't wait for is what you all come up with today, which is not to say you're talking about the airport per se, but in the larger context of circularity, what are those things that we can pull in this project and continue, as our mayor was saying, to bring Santa Monica forward and really challenge the region to do better in all of these things, especially in our circularity and waste diversion. And so with that, I have the distinct pleasure as well of welcoming our first panel. So if you're on the first panel, which is about materiality, please come on up. I'm going to introduce Sophie Pennetier, hopefully I didn't murder that too badly, as our moderator for this first panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Like a typical contractor, I'm starting behind schedule and I'm asked to finish before, the hour. And under budget? Okay, this is great. Please have your mic ready just whenever. Welcome, everybody. My name is Sophie Pennetier. I have the pleasure and honor to bring the people that really Amber were referring just a second ago. Those people that really have had stuff in their hands and think, what can I do with that, right? And so the people that have been innovators, advocates, and really true trailblazers throughout, the entirety of the panels we have today. So we will talk about materials. We're going to talk about what is happening in our cities here in Greater LA, and also respond to the situation we've had with the fires. And so our thoughts are going with anybody affected in that space. And we will also talk about innovation that is coming, or maybe hopefully soon coming to our city, as we have no time to spare to bring all the good ideas to the table. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists. We'll have some spitfire intros, maybe 5 minutes per speaker, and then we'll have a really healthy, engaged conversation where we'll talk about the topic at hand. Do you guys want to introduce yourself very briefly, starting with Steve, and then Morgan, you'll take the mic after that.
Okay, my name is Steve Palrand. I have two firms, Homefront Build and Carbon Shack. We do design, build, and residential construction.
She said you next.
No, Richard.
Okay. My name is Richard Lute. I'm with Interior Removal Specialist. We are an interior demolition contractor in Los Angeles. Last year we did about 3 million square feet of interior demolition in Southern California. We are fortunate enough to do all of our own hauling and have our own recycling facility where we kept about 78% of those materials out of landfill. Also, because we never lose track of that debris, we have a very strong donation program where we're donating 10 to 15 tons of furniture and fixtures that we take out of the buildings back into the community every month.
I'm Morgan Sykes-Jaybush. I'm the creative director at Omgivning Architects and Interior Designers. We focus in adaptive reuse of existing and historic buildings all across Southern California. And I've been doing this for about 20 years, but also have been with Omgivning for 16 since we started the company.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivier Dacosta from Montreal. My partners and I invented a machine to clean bricks easily right away on construction sites to avoid those bricks to go to landfill for nothing.
Hi, my name is Jeff Perry, the founder of Angel City Lumber. As the name suggests, we are a lumber yard in Angel City, but we are also a sawmill. We essentially utilize fallen Los Angeles County trees that would otherwise get mulched. We create lumber from those trees, and we sell the lumber and forest products back to Los Angeles County only end users.
All right, so we'll start with Morgan. Morgan, if I have a home that is gonna get demolished, what is the first thing I should do? What do you do with Omgivning?
You should call me and see what I can do with it. So in February, so separately from Omgivning, I'm also on the board of the Santa Monica Conservancy. And one of the things that Santa Monica does so well is they send out a list of all of the buildings over 40 years old that are proposed for demolition. So we were looking at those buildings at the beginning of February, just after the fires, and they were mostly not designated historic, and they were just like great, cute, sweet houses, and there's nothing that we could do about it. Cute is not enough to make it be a historic landmark. So then we were at Omgivning, we started a small group of architects to help share knowledge about how the county, because we're located in Chinatown, so we were focused on Altadena at that time, about what the county was going to require for rebuilding, so that each of us in small little architecture firms weren't having to learn those lessons, in our own silos. And there were different people talking about, specifically new build, what could be done, what was allowed, and there were people looking at, could we get RVs on people's sites? Could we do prefab? When someone said prefab, it immediately hit me, why couldn't we relocate existing houses the way that the city used to do? When we built all the freeways, there were thousands of houses that got relocated. When we built Bunker Hill, a lot of houses got relocated. Not enough houses. I learned yesterday that there used to be 26 house movers in the city of LA. Now there are 0. There's only 2 in the state that will work in Southern California. So I had to figure out how to do this. I started talking to every person I could think of in historic preservation. Within 2 days of having this idea, I got connected to a homeowner in Altadena, the couple that's behind me, that had the same idea. They lost their house and they were trying to figure out, could we relocate a house here, because they had such a small insurance payment that they couldn't afford to build new. It was through the Santa Monica Conservancy that we got connected, and that's where this whole thing started. Keep going. I think you can go to the next slide. Okay, great. So this house that is behind me is in Hollywood. It was purchased by a developer. There were 3 Craftsman houses in a row. They were not historically designated, all built between 1910 and 1911. One of them got demolished, and a neighbor in that neighborhood posted about it, and because there were 2 houses left, and they said, can someone do something? Can we stop the demolition of this house? And a lot of people saw it, including this family and myself. We looked into it a little bit. I happened to know the entitlement consultant. The next day I had the owner on the phone, and he said, you can just have the house. I'm going to tear it down, but you can just have it. So that's where it started. There was a tenant living in it. You can see it was absolutely 100% livable. Lots of wood paneling built in. It was under 47 layers of paint, but we're gonna fix all that. I think you can go to the next. So we also got introduced to Brad Chambers, who is a retired banker, and he has been relocating houses in the city for the past 20 years. So we picked his brain a lot, and we used his crew also to figure out what's the best way to do this. In the old days, people used to move houses like the entire house in one piece. But it's not done that much anymore because there's a lot more infrastructure. It's a lot more difficult from a permit standpoint to move a house very far distance. So Brad figured out a way to systematically deconstruct the house into smaller pieces, smaller sections. It still requires a lot of permits to more easily and more affordably move it across town. So what you can see behind me is we started by deconstructing the second floor. We deconstructed the fireplace. Each one of those bricks got numbered so it can be rebuilt. And then we took off the roof. We took apart all of the interior walls, so the interior plaster we could not salvage, but we salvaged everything else. All of the baseboards, all the doors, all of the windows, everything got numbered by room, and we just literally parked it downstairs in the ground floor. Then we left the gables and the front dormer and the porch, and we had a crane, which is a lot less expensive than we thought it would be. We had a crane come and take those pieces off individually, and then we cut the ground floor into 3 slices, what was left of the ground floor, into 3 slices, like slicing a loaf of bread. And then we drove it across town. This is one of the 2 house movers that are in the state that did this. They're located in Chino, and they literally took it on the freeway, as you can see. And then, yeah, this is the house in Altadena in its new location, its new home. So we had to do the permitting a little bit out of order because one of the things the developer required was that we get it moved as soon as possible, faster than we could get a building permit. So we got a temporary relocation permit from the county. They didn't even have a way to do this. So they issued us a garage sale permit with a note in the bottom that said relocation of building materials. We don't even have the building permit yet, honestly, but we're almost there. But the only thing they're requiring is a new foundation to current code. We have to follow current zoning code, so setbacks and height regulations. And if the house was coming from a different seismic or wind load zone, then we would have to do structural retrofit. And we're actually in a lesser seismic zone, so we didn't have to do that. So you can see the house behind me is in 3 sections. It's up on crib blocking about 5 feet above regraded and compacted soil. On yesterday, the workers started digging the trenches for the foundation so that when I do have the permit, we can get that inspected, and then we'll reassemble everything.
All right, so my name's Steve Power, and again, as I mentioned, we are a design build firm that primarily works in residential. So our goal with our clients is to optimize their relationship with the natural world, which means lowering their carbon footprint. So as far as the operational carbon footprint, there's operational carbon footprint, as I'm sure you all know, and embodied. Operational is pretty easy nut to crack. In that we really just have to convince people to cook with induction cooktop, all electric house, solar array on top. That's great. It pencils out because once you think of getting rid of all the gas piping and all that, you have some extra money to put into maybe the extra costs of some of the heat pumps and solar array and stuff like that. So the greater problem, and more, I think the point for this panel is the embodied carbon footprint. So the way we address that is to pick up when Morgan can't place that house with somebody. So what we do is we go in and we deconstruct the house, take all its parts apart. I began this process actually by working in the historic market maybe 25 years ago when I was trying to salvage craftsmen or homes that had specific siding and framing that was really 2x4, so that when we did additions and repairs to those historic homes, we had that historic material available. But then I realized we're the greenest people around because we were lowering people's embodied carbon footprint with their remodels. Of course, we're encouraging people to adaptive reuse that old house, but then any adaptive to the way we live now, we were of course lowering people's embodied carbon footprint. So we take houses apart and then we build new houses out of them. We've been doing that for decades on a small scale. Richard, of course, does it on a larger scale, and I have to get material from you. So about 8 years ago, I decided I really needed to quantify this, and we have a website. It's called sustainablebuild.org, which we have wonderful calculators for people to calculate their carbon footprint. So what we did is this developer came across, he knew about us, single family craftsman home built in 1910, 1912. And they needed it taken down because they were going to do multifamily. So development is always important. Increases in density is important. So you could say taking apart this home was important to build multifamily. So we took that house apart and quantified the cost of taking it apart versus what we got out of it. And we were able to show that it penciled out, that the deconstruction and then the material we got out of it penciled out to be cheaper than actually just demo and lot clear. I then built a home for myself. It was like a case study home. And out of this lumber that was milled in the Western Sierras 120 years ago. When you look at that lumber I just got goosebumps. When you look at the lumber that those 2x4s, you look at the ring count, those were 800 and 1,000-year-old trees that were milled. You can't get those trees anymore. Those are very tight grain, pieces of lumber, which today, the grain is very wide. So it's very high quality lumber. So we took this house apart 120 years ago. It was milled. We built a new house. Really, my grandchildren could take that house apart and build another new house, because development is always going to happen. It's how you reuse those materials within your municipal environment or whatever, right? So of course, by doing this, we're reducing municipal waste. We're also creating jobs, because bringing a bulldozer in and demoing a house, taking it off to the dump, of course, when that lumber, that beautiful old growth lumber, decomposes in a landfill, it produces more harmful climate gases than it does if you just chipped it. But of course, if you keep it out of the municipal landfill, you reuse it in building within the inner city. Of course, you're creating jobs and you're reducing landfill. Of course, some cities, I don't want to shade Santa Monica, but some cities, Oregon is the best example, have code that requires that any building built before 1940 has to be deconstructed because of the quality of the lumber and, of course, reduced waste. So that's one way to address it. Because, for the most part, when a developer comes in, and I have a project on 15th Street, the house next door, single-story Spanish colonial revival, I guarantee that house is going to be lot cleared. Because developers come in, they have financing, they got to get that thing cleared, they got to get it out of the way. So I encourage you to look at codes that would require more deconstruction than just waste diversion. So therefore, it's more reuse than recycling. Do you want me to keep going on? Grading. Okay, so I don't know that there's anybody else that does what we do, because the difficulty of reusing lumber. So what we do is we try to upstream the material, right? This beautiful old lumber comes on the market, it's downstreamed, it's cut into finished materials, put on the front of Starbucks, the life is over, right? Because in 5 years, maybe Starbucks got out of business, okay, maybe 20 years, whatever. But then it's gonna be demoed and it's gonna be thrown off to the dump. So what we do, despite the fact that this is gorgeous tight grain lumber that would make the most beautiful cabinetry in the world, we upstream the material and continue to use it as framing. So now that's difficult, and the reason why I say there's very few people that do it is because lumber that is before, I think it's 1960 or so, was not graded because it was such high quality. The modern grading system came in only later when lumber 2x4s went down to 3.5 by 1.5. Lumber dimension reduced and the quality reduced. So what we have to do is we have to actually grade each individual piece of lumber. And that is a process that you kind of have to know what you're doing. It's actually very simple. We get huge piles of lumber. Oh, that's a grading mark right there. We get huge piles of lumber, and we just have our guys shuffle the lumber, each piece in front of the grader. He eyes it, tells us, we lose about 20% because some of that lumber is just not of, it's broken, it's got too many knots or whatever. He identifies it, he tells us to trim it, he tells us to get rid of it, he tells us good, he stamps it, boom, next. It's a crazy process, but it actually still pencils out to be cheaper than new lumber. What was the other point? Oh yeah, and so then the other thing is that, when you're doing these houses and when you're doing these projects and you're really optimizing all these things, the heat pump is in the basement, the heat pump hot water heater's outside, the solar array's up on the roof, the insulation, the beautiful framing is trapped in the walls. So the other thing we wanted to do is we realized we had to bring that story of lowering your impact with nature and biophilia into the environment that the occupants were in. So we really work hard to bring that story into the environment of stewardship of the environment. So for our framing cutoffs, we make cabinets out of it. When you're cutting a piece of lumber and you got to trim it down, we save it. We make furniture. We make cabinets out of it. There was one project we had over here maybe 8-10 years ago. I won't say where it is, but it was in Santa Monica, and this church was getting rid of their crappy old church pews. We're going to upgrade. We just happen to have a project nearby, and I said, those church pews are probably, Honduran mahogany from the 1920s. that is gold. And they were like, we just got to upgrade. So I took all their old church pews and we turned it into tables. And I mean, just the most beautiful furniture. So I think that my example is always the Apollo 13, example of, they're going to the moon, they have a blowout on the oxygen tank, and then they're doomed, right? But then they scavenge from the lunar lander, and they creatively put together this package to survive. And I think if we can all look at that way, of our communities that way, and think of not, taking from nature out there, but reusing nature within our communities and trying to survive within our communities, we can just taking that approach. Most of you are probably in commercial, not residential, but take that approach of how do I reuse everything I find in front of me rather than throwing it to the dump, and we can achieve better things. Is that good?
Hey, look, that's us. So again, we are a little different. These guys all do residential. All we do is commercial interior. As you guys know, your average tenant in a Class A high-rise moves every 5 to 7 years. And you architects in the audience, thank you very much, because y'all are not speccing garbage to go into these projects. If you look at the quality of the materials that are going into these projects, that we know are only going to last 5 to 7 years. Now, again, at IRS Demo, we're very fortunate because we are the demo contractor, the hauler, the recycler. All of our competition is using rented dumpsters, and I'm not trying to badmouth my competition. But the big waste haulers all have very, very ironclad no scavenging rules. The minute that hits the dumpster, it's trash. Doesn't matter if it's a bar of gold. So those materials are lost. Because we are all three, we can bring that back. We're also blessed to have a gigantic warehouse that we can store it in to make those materials available to nonprofits. We do not sell any of the materials we take out of the buildings. Let me rephrase that. We sell the steel and the copper and the aluminum, the salvage. But any furniture and fixtures, that's all donation. And what we do is repeatable. It is eminently repeatable. But I think what makes us even more different than our competition in that, and again, this is not a sales pitch for IRS Demo. What we do can and should be done by others. We also have the only third-party verified recycling facility in Southern California. How many people here are familiar with RCI? Okay. So for those of you who aren't, the U.S. Green Building Council has the LEED program. Within that, there are some recycling points available. What we found out is the fraud is gigantic in this industry. Most facilities that handle construction demolition debris self-report their numbers, which is kind of like people investigating themselves. We know how that goes. So California, in their infinite wisdom, set forth a 65% diversion rate. Cool. Except the facilities aren't up for that, for the most part. Then Santa Monica comes up with 70%. Pasadena is 75%. West Hollywood has an 80% minimum diversion rate to process materials. Now, a lot of you are saying good. No, it's not. And I can tell you that as boots on the ground. What they're doing is incentivizing fraud. So if you have a facility and you want to handle material from Santa Monica, you have to show a 70% diversion rate, whether you have it or not. Now, I just really depressed a couple of contractors earlier talking about how the fraud goes on. It's really simple. So diversion rates are predicated on a mathematical equation. Tons in minus tons to the landfill. So you bring in 100 tons a day, you send 25 tons a day to the landfill, you have a 75% diversion rate, and every load that comes in gets credit for that same 75%. Well, here's the problem. You need more tonnage, you do what we call ghosting loads. You invent 3 trucks a day coming in at 20 tons each. So there's 60 tons of material you never saw, so it will never go to the landfill, which means it was diverted, right? So your recycling rate goes up. That's exactly how it's done.
What are the successes in this industry?
You mean besides us? I kid. Well, I mean, here's the thing. What we do is demo. I mean, I really don't want to concentrate on that. There are other companies out there that do a decent job at demo. But we want to talk about the sustainability. And that's my thing, is what we are doing is repeatable. But we need, where I go with this and what we can do in the future and what makes this successful is pushing for other facilities to do the same thing. I'm currently writing legislation, hopefully Ben shows up later, that would require all C&D facilities in California to get third-party verified, to have somebody look over their shoulder and verify those diversion rates. So San Francisco has had this program for a couple of years. It is wildly successful. There's some huge successes with that. LA County in 2003 passed their new C&D ordinance. They included third-party verification mandates. They don't know how they're going to do it, but they put it in the ordinance, right? So that's good, or something. But overall, there is a lot of success in the industry. You know, diversion rates are going up. We have things like carpet. For a long time, carpet was one of the biggest greenwashing issues in the industry, because they tell you how much they recycled, but they wouldn't tell you it was just residential. And commercial was an end-of-life product. But then we all complained, and the mills listened. And now every carpet mill is making cradle-to-cradle carpet squares. And I have a lot of hope for that. You know, I can't verify it yet because they're all too new for us to really see coming through the facility. But I have carpet mills calling us saying, have you seen it yet? We want it back. That's a huge win. We look at things like low and no VOC paint. When green building first started, it's twice the cost of standard paint. Now, not only has it reached parity in cost, you can't find the toxic stuff anymore. So we make a lot of inroads. There is a lot of success. Sophie yelled at me at the beginning of this because I tended to concentrate on the negative, because sadly, that's what I see on my end most. But as an industry, the work that you have done, the work that the people on this stage has done, we're seeing some progress. Now, with the current administration, I'm not going negative here. With the current administration, we can't depend on help from the feds. But that's okay, because that brings it back to state and local. That motivates us more to do more on a small level that in the future can grow more. And I think we need to lean into that. And we need to do the best that we can do, because I hate to argue with the mayor, but right now, C&D is almost 50% of what's going into the waste stream. 50%. And nobody talks about it. You know, I was at a waste conference a couple of months ago, 4-day conference, 60 speakers. I was the only one talking about C&D. There were 13 speakers on food waste. Now, food waste is important. I don't want to minimize that. But I think it's important for us as an industry to realize that the reason we had 13 people talking about food waste and only me on C&D is because only 5 to 10% of the entire population ever has to look at C&D. So John Pugh Public doesn't even know what's going on. So it falls to us to do the best we can with half of what's going in the landfill.
Hi, everyone. Olivier Dacosta from Montreal. First of all, thank you, everyone, to be here. Thank you, Sophie, the team of everyone who organized this event. It's beautiful, beautiful place. To make a short story, at first we were a masonry company in 2019, and we were fed up of looking bricks going to landfills when we were demolishing and bringing back the exact same product. And at one point, we were looking for a solution all over the planet. We were cleaning bricks with pick and hammer, chisels, and we couldn't find an innovation or an equipment that would help us to do it faster, because it was like lots of time and lots of people cleaning brick by hand. And at one point, we couldn't find it. We decided 4 friends to invent one for the company. And once the prototype, this machine, the first, which is not this one, but once the prototype was invented, we were on a mission as friends, and we wanted to do changes. We wanted to share what we did and to make people reuse bricks. It's simple. Bricks, when they're manufactured, they are built it for many, many years. They're there to last. And it's kind of a shame after 40 years, 30 years, just throw them away to landfill and bring the exact same product. So at that point, we invented this machine. And then after next step, we decided, sorry, sometime my English, first language is French. We decided how we can bring this equipment right away on a construction site. And then after, right away on the wall, so by working on elevators next to the wall or scaffolds. So that's what our mission. And it was reusing brick, the most of the brick that can be reused. Even we started a program with the politics of Quebec province that people can just like, if they demolishing a house, they can just give the bricks. We're going to send some bins and they're going to go be cleaned by those machines on a reinsertion program and then be resold by the new brick distributor actually. So it gave them another line. There is some very great heritage jobs that needs to be redone and as the exact same bricks. So that's our point actually, needs to be reused. Every construction material should be reused if they are good, which is wood or everything you guys doing. It's very nice to be with you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm very impressed. That's about it. So that's a machine. Actually, you're going to see it's quite a small machine, 4 feet, but whoops. And this is just work right away on a residential. That's actually 2 weeks ago in Montreal on a residential area, deconstructing the wall and cleaning the brick and rebuilding the wall with the exact same brick, with the exact same color match at that point. The problem was on a left wall. This example is more commercial building, and it's on a Fracco elevator. So we're working in the air, actually. We're working on the 8th floor right away with this. This is even higher. It's in a building in Montreal as well. And we were working, I think it was the 8th floor in Old Montreal, if you guys know a little bit of Montreal. So that's about it. And this machine now is distributed all over Europe. We're facing with different policies, different ways of thinking, but everybody we're working with has the same goal. And I think over here, everybody has the goal to do the right things, and you guys are the influencers for this. So that's why we're very happy to be here. It doesn't matter, actually. And sometimes older bricks have a better compression test than newer bricks. So all depends on the territories, how the manufacturer. But we did studies with University of Montreal and Synergie Montréal. By using this machine on a site, well, you can avoid 6 tons of carbon per 1,000 square feet. No, it takes out all the mortar out of the brick and just gonna expose the pores for the new mortar. Compared to chipping, there's still gonna be mortar, so it's even better. I would say shaved, you know. So it's gonna perfectly, it's guided by lasers. Actually, we have a machine in California right now. We lended a machine to SciArc for the students to motivate them to see that things can be done different way, you know. And regarding the studies, you know, if you're counting the extraction of clay argile and cooking of the argile, and then transport to the distributors to the project, and after transport to landfill, and landfill by itself, you know. So you're avoiding 6 tons of CO2 by using it on construction sites. Of course, it's going to be used probably out of construction sites. We have customers in the world that using this machine as like recycling centers and things like that. But the main point is just pushing to reuse things that are good. It's kind of stupid for us to take a product, send it to landfill, and bring back the exact same product.
Okay. So similar to what Richard was saying, I've gotten to see behind the curtain about how our urban canopy and our urban wildland interface canopies are managed. And to no one's individual faults, it's just bananas. And I think also to something Richard was saying too is the everyday person connects with a tree or a series of trees or a neighborhood of trees, but when they are taken down and the process behind which they need to be disposed of, which is hard to even say, it's overwhelming. So, the other thing I would say is this panel here, every single person so far is, I would say, extremely innovative. And I even saw the word innovative somewhere utilized as part of this panel. And I would say that we are absolutely not innovative because as much as people say that, humans have used the wood from trees in their eye shot since they were on 2 feet. So we're actually just trying to render it down to the most simplest way to go about it and walk it back from its just insane complexity. Okay, so what do we do? Okay, so our process is essentially we are out into the world of LA County, and as trees come down, we intercept those trees and we mill lumber from them on our sawmills at our facility in Boyle Heights. Also at our facility, there's a kiln drying process because wood needs to be dried before it is used as building material. And we sell the lumber back to the LA County only community. We also do some fabrication as well. A project that's near and dear to the hearts of some in here, like Amber Rashane, who we thank very much for that, is Santa Monica City Hall, where the late and great Peter Provenzale, who was the city of Santa Monica forester, had recovered some trees for us to utilize back into the Santa Monica City Hall as tables. So that's just an example of what we do. Let's just go to the next slide, actually. Yeah, so we've been doing this for 10 years. Just in these last couple years, we've started working with our local forest, which people, oh yeah, we have a forest in Los Angeles County. Forgot about that. It's called the Angeles National Forest. So, of course, we have our urban canopy and we also have our forest canopy. Quick aside before I get into this, the whole point of what we're doing, we very much feel at Angel City Lumber, we get brought to a lot of conversations that talk about circularity and sustainability. We actually, believe it or not, feel like it's a bit of a sidebar or a byproduct. We actually feel like we have a crisis of not only climate and carbon. We actually have, I think we have a kind of a connection crisis or a spiritual crisis. So these trees, we think of them as living beings. Because they are, and we think of them as social beings because they are. So we're trying to draw back the mentality that this is not just a building material or a resource this is actually something that was a gift that was given to us by the same mystery of whatever the reason we're here. So that's essentially the driving force behind this all. And it also happens to be really smart and also better for our local economy and our environment and et cetera. So back to the forest. So within these last couple years, we've started now integrating not only with municipalities like Santa Monica, not only with private tree services for our urban canopy, but now the Forest Service for the Angeles National Forest. Our domestic forests have been, I'm not trying to throw shade either, but mismanaged for the last couple hundred years. So now we have a overgrowth problem the country over. In other parts of the country, there is actually a path for a lot of this wood. In Southern California, there has not been. So the Angeles has been really struggling, especially with fires, but also because there's a lot of dead wood on the forest floor. A lot of which is important for wildlife and for soil biome, but we are way beyond that. So we have now started interfacing with them for trees from the forest. Certain species have certain applications. A lot of the urban canopy species that we see have really great millwork and furniture grade lumber. A lot of the forest trees create excellent also millwork lumber, but also structural component, post and beam lumber. As Steve was talking about, there's actually a lot of old trees that are now coming down due to beetle kill or a hazard tree or a blown tree that are 200-300 years old with vertical grain, extremely tight grain. So we're trying to utilize this. Then I'm going to quickly turn to the fact that since the Palisades and Eaton fires, this has presented a whole new, for everyone obviously in the community, a whole new set of trials and tribulations. So our version of that was, or is, specifically in Altadena, the trees that were removed during remediation by the Army Corps of Engineers were getting chipped. And it just added insult to injury for Altadena to lose so much canopy and then chip the wood. So I got in touch with the Army Corps, LA County, took a few months, but we diverted the trees. So now we have a 2.5 acre lot that is the Las Flores Canyon Water Company site in Altadena. We're renting space from them. We've diverted those trees from the debris site to this new site, and we are setting up an auxiliary milling operation, milling and kiln drying operation at the site in Altadena to mill between 1 and 2 million board feet of millwork lumber for Altadenans only as they're rebuilding over the next 3 years. Thanks. We have a long way to go, but thank you very much. We're just scratching the surface. We do have the trees. We're still looking for money for infrastructure, but we're well on our way. So I bring this up to say we are creating millwork lumber. We're creating a production line setup in Altadena, which is a little bit of a departure from what we currently do in Boyle Heights, which is about 70% custom projects working with people like architects and designers like yourselves to project-based jobs. So if you specify us in a project, we end up milling, drying, fabricating for that project. That's about 70% of our business currently. This foray into more of a production line setup in Altadena will create more lumber. It will raise economies of scale. It will lower price. the more we continue to grow this model within LA County, the more accessible this lumber is for everybody, and the more connected we are to our urban canopy. And here's some examples of millwork. As I keep saying millwork lumber, millwork lumber, millwork lumber. People are like, cool, I don't know, what is that? So here are some examples of millwork lumber. Here are some stair and treads and risers material, a lot of jam and case goods, casework and trim. There's flooring also. This house here in Mount Washington is an example of also flooring, door casings, actually veneers on the doors, all from species that you wouldn't see on the commercial market, but all from species that you would see walking down the street. What am I missing? Was that good? Be quiet, Jeff.
I have a question for you. When we look at the number of trees that come down, in our cities, and how much volume of lumber
Thank
we
you.
bring into our city, how does that compare?
Yeah, okay. That was a good,
First question.
this is staggering. Okay, I'll make it brief then. So LA County, as of 2022, consumes about 2.64 billion board feet of lumber a year. And that's not sheet goods. That's not composite material. That's wood. That is lumber. That is construction grade. That is furniture grade, etc. Also, if we looked at how much wood that we're mulching or chipping in a year, it is well over 3 billion board feet in LA
Take
County.
those numbers again.
2.64 billion consumed, and we're throwing away, or chipping, I shouldn't say throwing away, because we use the chips.
That good mulch.
Yeah, good mulch.
That
nothing
burns
against
very
mulch.
well. That
Yes.
burns so well.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, we are then going out and importing lumber from all over the world to build Los Angeles.
With all those things that Richard can tell us goes to landfill, this millwork. Do you want to tell something a bit more depressing for just 1 minute, Richard? All that final, all these things. So
I get to be depressing again?
yes. We did some prep there, but a family could have chose to use this slab for the tables or kitchen table, or they could go to, I'm not going to give names, to get something a little cheaper. But what happened to the particle board they could use instead? Where does that go at the end of life?
So one of the things I've always said is the most toxic stuff that we have to deal with that is not considered hazardous waste is what we call manufactured lumber. Particle board, plywood, MDF, it's all the same thing. It's little pieces of wood glued together to make a big piece of wood. And all of it has formaldehyde, so it won't rot, and pesticides, so the bugs won't eat it, and fungicide, so mold won't grow, and fire retardant, so it won't burn, and then we stain it and varnish it if it's a finished piece, or if it's going in the kitchen, we glue some plastic to it. It's not pretty stuff. As somebody who runs a C&D recycling facility, we do commercial interior. That's the only wood we really see. Nobody's using dimensional lumber in a high-rise. And there are two outlets for that. You can take it to a landfill, or it can go to, say, a cement kiln or brick kiln to be used as a fuel for the cement kiln. And people always say, well, isn't that toxic? Yeah, damn right it is. However, it's less toxic than burying it. And we have one of those Sophie's choices. No matter what we do with that material. Sorry. Your fault. But no matter what we do with it, we're going to cause some harm. But at the end of the day, we're the ones that have to deal with it. It showed up at our doorstep. So we can bury it and pollute the groundwater, or we can burn it and pollute the air. That's about all we have. Now, the only upside is when it goes to a cement kiln, those fires burn so hot, we're actually uncoupling some of the hydrocarbon chains. So while the output is toxic, it's less toxic than it was when it went in. So it's a win and a loss at the same time. But, the only time I've ever been nervous getting on stage to speak, I spoke at Greenbuild in 2007. I followed the keynote. Word of advice, never follow Bill Clinton. Don't do it. But Rick Federici introduced me, and he said something when he introduced me. He said, there's no such place as a way. And that really struck me, because our whole lives, we're told, you buy it, you use it, you throw it away. There is no way. There is an environmental and a physical cost to everything that we get rid of. And as consumers, it's incumbent upon us. Now, we know. But our job is to make sure everybody else does. Because like we talked about earlier, it's 50% of what's going in the landfill. And it's arguably the most toxic 50% of what's going in the landfill. But we can make a difference.
If only we had rot-resistant, insect-resistant species around us.
I think that's called eucalyptus, but that's not important.
Okay, we're going to have a couple of spitfire questions. Morgan, with Giving, can you give us a comparison in time between taking down a home and rebuilding a new versus moving the home and completing it fully? How does that compare in orders of magnitude?
Assuming that we can schedule all the crews, that's the critical issue. But assuming we can line up all the crews back to back, it takes about 3 weeks to deconstruct a house, about a week to move it across town, and then about 9 months, 6 to 9 months, depending on how much we cut it apart and how much we need to, restore to put it back together. About 6 to 9 months to until they can move in.
So we're talking, I remember you said we talked about like 1 year.
Less than a year.
Yeah, versus maybe a year and a half. So if cost, is not the deal breaker, schedule may be one of your edges on this. And no seismic retrofit required for your special recipe.
Not yet. We've moved 2 houses so far. It depends on how far the house is coming. We have, because we've been talking about it, or the second house that we moved, there was actually 2 helicopters, news helicopters on site as we arrived with the house at 5 a.m. So then everyone found out about it, and now I've got 150 people on a waiting list. So I'm hunting for houses as well. So it does depend on where the house originates.
And what do you do with the bricks on site?
What do we do with the bricks? Well, one of the things we can't move easily is the chimney. So we're deconstructing the chimney, as you saw, and rebuilding it, because we are still allowed to have existing chimneys.
If only there was a
Because this is an
company.
existing house
Yeah.
that we're just picking up and moving across town.
If only there was a company not too far from you, they would.
We're trying to, as long as the developer doesn't tear it down. We're getting ready to move the 3rd house, and we have 2 chimneys to deconstruct.
One is for us, actually. For
Yes.
the students.
one of the chimneys we're not going to rebuild, and we're going to give those bricks to you. And the second chimney we're going to.
We would like to extend an invitation on behalf of SciArc to come and reach out to me to have a demonstration of the equipment. We've been trained on the equipment, thanks to Olivier and his team of inventors around, and we can show you how we're going to clean off Morgan's chimney. Olivier, you're based in Montreal. We all, we can speak French to each other, but what was the what was it like when you had this project? We were flipping through pictures, but you transposed your experience to taking down the Cadillac factory. How easy was this to use in the U.S.? You told us sort of great of Québécois stories. What about the U.S.?
Yeah. U.S. actually, we did a project, Cadillac First Assembly in Detroit. It was this construct and rebuilt it with the same bricks. Actually, the architect asked to reuse a big percentage of bricks for the new project, and they were pick and hammer them when they find us. And we went for a demonstration, show them, and show the efficiency of the machine, the equipment. At that point, they saved a lot of time. Imagine someone with an operator with a pick and hammer or chisel or whatever. A great one's going to do maybe 300, 350 bricks a day. With this equipment is made to do production. So the same operator is going to do around 2,000 brick a day. So it helped a lot to rebuild faster as the brick point.
Yeah, so specifying bricks, the look, the match, and really working with the contractor on schedule seem to have been your key points there. Wonderful. So we're about time. I see there's some questions, but you know, schedule is king or queen. And so we're gonna just probably wrap it up for right now. There's an opportunity to engage with this panelists at the tables where we're gonna have in a second, but Steve wants to have a closing word.
I just want to make a pitch for an event like this. So an event like, you know, I work in my little world and nobody knows what I do pretty much, right? And, you know, that's kind of the way it goes. And events like this bring us all together. So in this event alone, Sophie has hooked me up with the reuse people. I'm rebuilding out of my salvage pile in my yard, 3 homes in Altadena, but now I have a dozen, and I'm hoping to work with the reuse people and truck a bunch of lumber to Altadena and rebuild. So, and of course, you know, we can also use bricks. And of course, I've been trying to pester Morgan that every time he can't get a house moved, we can come in and demo. I've worked with Jeff for years, but you know, we all work in our little niche, and events like this bring us together so we can make connections and further this program. Whatever. There you
Thank you. I couldn't find better closing words. We're gonna have a 5-minute break and we'll be back in 5 minutes on stage. Thank you.
Okay, maybe let's get started and then the rest people will trickle in. Okay, all right. We are so excited. Well, I'm so excited to have this panel of amazing people. I think this panel is super diverse and has a very wide range of experiences. And I think that's like one of the key things when we're talking about circularity and circular economy and deconstruction and how diverse and how diverse your project teams have to be and collaborative they have to be. I'm gonna let you all introduce yourselves. Please do so.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Rachel, for having us and the City of Santa Monica. Celia Hogue, I work for DPR Construction and I handle sustainability for our Southwest region. I also just realized I'm wearing the exact same blouse as my profile pic. So if we want to talk about material reuse, it's happening right now.
Cecilia, it happens.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Denise Brown, and I'm the founder and owner of All About Waste. We're like global circular economy and zero waste consulting firm. We have helped our clients to divert. I want to keep you that word. I want you to keep that word in mind. Divert waste. We've been diverting waste over 700,000 pounds and counting from landfills. Yeah, we're very proud. Even though we're a small company, we've been working with different type of clients globally, and believe it or not, waste is a global issue. Also, I also want to thank you, the City of Santa Monica, for putting this event together. I hope we have more events like this, and we have the opportunity to talk and share experiences, or bad news or bad vibes, as Richard brought it up. I think it's important as well. And just want to keep two things in your mind today. So number one is that waste is often overlooked in the global carbon emissions. Approximately 45% of global emissions are linked to how we make, use, and dispose our products, what we call like a material economy. And then the second thing, since we're here next to, the Santa Monica Bay, most of you guys probably read or saw in the news that because of the fires, we actually had a huge problem of the materials, especially hazardous waste and hazardous materials going to the ocean. So I just want to mention that circular economy goes beyond the material. It affects a lot of social, positive or negative. So we have that opportunity, and also the health of the community. So just keep that in mind, the carbon and the other impacts related to circular economy. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Melo from Nous Engineering. So we're structural engineers based here in Los Angeles. Founding partner from about almost 15 years ago now. We are small business, local. So we're really, our focus and my focus on what I bring to the panel as well is really the smaller scale projects and community, very strongly community focused projects. And we're very focused from day one on collaboration with the team. And as was kind of hinted at in these previous panels, and the really exciting part of these projects is the collaboration that's necessary and the teamwork that's necessary from all parties. And I'm excited to be here and talk about some of the fun people we're working with that are on the first panel and how it just is all working together and what we can do moving forward.
Howdy, y'all. I'm Kathleen Hetrick. I work with Burrow Happel as a global engineering company. I've been there for 12 years. It's the only job I've ever had since when I was a little intern. I slept on Heidi's couch when she was my boss, and I couldn't afford to live in LA. So thank you, Heidi, for bringing me here to LA from Texas. And I'm also a Johns Hopkins Bloomberg Fellow. I really would like us, as the other lovely lady said, circularity, it's not just about waste or carbon. I really think it's something that can bring us all together, Republican, Democrat, socialist, circularity, anarchists like myself. It's about jobs, it's about bringing dignity back to people, it's about, the artists and craftsmanship that we've lost, and it's about health. My brother is a firefighter in San Antonio, and when our building materials burn because we put all that crappy plastic, like Richard was saying, in it, it's not just bad for the environment, it literally gives people cancer. And, and during the wildfires here in LA, we saw huge emissions of chlorine gas, during the fires. And that hit all of us, not just the folks whose homes burned. And that stuff is not made in California. It's made in, Cancer Alley in Louisiana. It's made in West Virginia. So circular economy, it's a sustainability thing, but I really think it's a kitchen table issue thing. We can bring people affordability. We can tackle the fertility crisis. And I think it's just been amazing here to be with y'all here today, and so excited to learn from this esteemed panel. So thank you.
That's tough to follow. My name is Steve Clem, and I lead sustainability on basically the Western U.S. for Skanska USA Building. We are a commercial general contractor at a little bit larger scale projects than Liz was mentioning, and we're headquartered in Stockholm, which people immediately assume that's why we're sustainable. And I really enjoy telling them that we're doing lots of good things here in the U.S. And that we can export those ideas across the pond. I have a connection to the city of Santa Monica. A former colleague, Joel, asked me to do a cost study on the feasibility of building a Living Building Challenge project, the first municipal project ever to be built. And I said, sure. And so he hired me to do that. We had some experience in that realm. And it was the first one ever to get built, and I have not been inside. I've kind of steamed up the window from the outside once, so I'm looking forward to getting inside today and checking it out. And I think that's a sort of an important, just an important example of sort of demystifying some of these topics, naming them, putting a price on them, getting some traction, and then celebrating the results. And so, I think that's really important. And I also like to build on the idea of storytelling and connectiveness and creativity, because I think obviously new materials are the easy button, especially for a risk-averse, low-margin contracting business like my own, where, yep, all new, whatever, push the button, easy to do. So the passion that's involved in this topic, I think, is what makes it unique.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. So it's safe to say when you're working in the circularity space, it needs to be very collaborative across different disciplines. There have been a few projects recently that have become great examples of success in the deconstruction and circularity space. And some of them are the Spark project in New York that Borough Happold and Skanska worked on together. Another is the Contra Costa County building that Zero Waste worked on. It's the first true zero waste public project certified in the world. The City of Boulder Hospital that KLNA structural engineers have worked on that has been talked about a lot this year because it's such a cool project. And the Historic House Relocation Project, which saves important buildings from demolition and reuses in a community where that's urgently needed, that Nous Engineering has worked on. So out of all you guys, what are some of the key steps or considerations required to successfully complete deconstruction and circularity projects?
I think, we really need to change the culture of our industry. If we've got any scale of building, whether it's the small to the big, I think as architects, engineers, sustainability consultants, we just got to get everyone together and be like, hey, let's just look at what we got. Let's look at this existing building that's got to get demoed. Know that, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Go around, do a circularity audit, just brainstorm together. Don't let it just be the obvious thing to just demo it. And you don't have to save it all, right? It's just like, how can we start from that conversation? We're not doing that enough. We really need to bring clients alongside. Structural engineers need to work with the MEP engineers, need to work with the architects, need to work with the developers. We're going to find really great creative solutions. And that's, that was the first thing we did on the Spark project in NYC, really great leadership project from NYEDC that they were really taking down a nursing school, turning it into a public high school and a community college. We're also doing it here in Los Angeles at Los Angeles General Hospital. That building's going to be turned into adaptive reuse for housing, but we got to figure out, where's the furniture going? Where are we going to do with the interiors? And you have to be curious. We're not curious enough in this industry. That is a big problem. We need to start asking stupid questions, bringing together, working together, being back in person, and connecting with these materials. It's really important that we think about who made this this doorknob and screwed all these damn screws into it. Really honor the materials is our first thing. Then we can start doing the analysis. Then we can count the carbon. Then we can, work with our contractor buddies that figure out, okay, how do I get this material into the hands of everybody? Because I think what's really cool was the first panel, so many different people doing so many cool things at different scales, but we don't all know about it. This is not a problem we can solve with just one project. We really need cities, institutions, developers, folks with scale to bring all of us together because we can't do it alone. That's what I would say.
And I would say from the contractor side of things, for us, it's absolutely the best if it is client driven. However, that does not mean just because our owner might not care about waste, which is sometimes a lot of the times, very much an out of sight, out of mind concept, as Richard actually shared on the panel earlier. But if it's not owner driven, like DPR, we have a goal to achieve a minimum 75% diversion on all of our projects company wide by the end of next year, 2026, with a goal to achieve 90% by 2030. So we are just trying to do the right thing as contractors. We self-perform deconstruction. We're really trying to build that business. Last year, 10% of our revenue in deconstruction was from salvageability. So it actually ended up being profitable for us. But what makes it successful, it is getting in there, like Kathleen said, early enough in pre-construction where we can actually schedule out deconstruction, salvageability analysis, site walk, all of those things. We can make sure our crews get in there early enough to understand what's going on so that we can really put the systems in place and the processes in place to be successful. That's when we want to be reaching out to our manufacturers on take-back programs. That's when we want to be sourcing all the gentlemen that were up here today. We'd be reaching out to their facilities. That's all happening before mobilization. Because if we mobilize, then you're kind of, I don't want to swear, but SHIT out of luck. Because it's the easiest thing to do is to go and demo the building, pull up 2 40-yard dumpsters and throw it all in. So.
Yeah, I normally work with developers and building owners and investors. They're like typically my clients. So like actually people that are building and behind the scene, work with the Contra Costa County. One of my favorite buildings projects, I work on over 200 lead projects in my life and true projects as well. But the Contra Costa County is truly one of my favorites. And that project showed me 4 things I want to share with you guys that I think is very important since we have a lot of, cities and government here. So the first thing is the willingness to change the status quo. You guys have to have like the gut to be like, one thing, it doesn't need to be quantity. Always think about quality over quantity, but change the status quo. Don't be afraid of making things differently. The Contra Costa County is in the Contra Costa County, and they are not very progressive, to be honest, for example, comparing to the city of Santa Monica. But they were, when they talked to me, I brought it up, this is like 5 years ago, I brought it up like circular economy, and they're like, what? Can you repeat that again? And with my accent, it got even worse. And I had to explain, and throughout the process, I had to guide them, and they were, that's the second point, they were willing to take a risk. And the risk is, that's very important to keep in mind, is that you're not going to have all the answers in front of you when you start your project. You're not going to have the perfect stakeholders, the perfect solutions and everything. You just need to be like, okay, we're gonna figure this out as we go. So that's the second point as well, is to have the courage to not have all the answers and the solutions right away. The third point is to be innovative, think outside of the box. When all of folks that I know here, we started to work with sustainability. I personally started working with sustainability in Brazil over 20 years ago. I can tell you that I used to call, Sher-Williams and say, where's your VOC? And they're like, what? So you, like 20 years ago, more than that, lead in all the languages, all the documents that, right now are so easy and everybody knows, was not a thing, at least in Brazil 20 years ago. And there were few developers that took the risk and say, we're gonna do it no matter what. This is what we believe, this is our goal, we're gonna do it. So just think out of the box and be innovative. And the last thing is think on the big picture. I love what the city of Santa Monica is thinking about the airport. Think about the big picture and think about long-lasting, results and long-lasting success. So circular economy, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And it's up to us to really start introducing that in our daily lives. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, again, so then bringing it back to a just like neighborhood scale, the projects that we worked on recently with Morgan, the historic house relocation, I think wasn't driven by a specific client, right? There wasn't a stakeholder team involved that assembled a crew. Morgan's on the Conservancy here in Santa Monica and has a passion for historic architecture. And how many times, Morgan, do you call up Omar and ask him a random question? And usually our response at NAUS is, I've never done that before, but let's figure it out. And so we, in moving the houses, it was this again, I would argue, similar to the first panel, this isn't innovative. This is something that people have done for centuries. And it's just being bold to do it again, And so as my profession, life safety is critical. That's where we come in, and we're there to make sure that seismic there's the resilience, and just the core life safety. So, the critical thing, Morgan started to hint at it. Are we changing risk category? Are we increasing our seismic acceleration? Otherwise, it's just existing building code. It's an existing building. We get to design a new foundation and have details to stitch it back together. But again, it's just these really subtle projects that are saving entire structures that we're able, just by being willing to try, that we're able to team up with really passionate people. And I think that's the part that I think is so amazing is, yes, there's the need for the large government projects and large scale thinking, but there's also communities that can change. There's grassroots efforts that can make a very big impact here. And that's where we're seeing a lot of movement and excitement on our end.
Yeah, I'll just follow that up with, the sort of, I mentioned connectedness in my introduction, and one of my colleagues in our Atlanta office is passionate about this topic, and actually founded a circular materials nonprofit in the city of Atlanta, and that led to us being able to repurpose. They had a partnership with the Georgia film industry, and I've heard there's a film industry somewhere around here as well. And they build a lot of sets. They build a lot of things out of lumber. They are very temporary, and they typically go to the landfill. And so for the project at Georgia Tech, we were able to repurpose these, gently used 2x4s. We made nail laminated panels, and we alternated the used 2x4, which was not regraded, unfortunately, in between a new virgin 2x6. So every other one was new. And my first reaction was, oh my God, there's all these ungraded pieces in there. And then someone said, well, wouldn't you trust a floor framing that was 2x6s, 3 inches on center? And I said, yeah, okay, good point. So that component inside was not part of the structural calculation, but it did create a integrated panel that had acoustic properties because of the varying depths of the two materials. Architecturally interesting, exposed, and I think one of the more important stories was that the first panel was made by a bunch of Yahoo estimators who said that, well, if we can make one of these in 45 minutes, I'm sure someone who has some skill could make them much faster. And we partnered with a workforce development organization called Georgia Works. There were folks that had barriers to employment, whether that was houselessness, past incarceration, brought in these folks as sort of apprentice trainees, built these panels, 400 some odd of them, and then several of them went on to be hired as carpenters and other skilled trades. So obviously that's not possible if you just buy something out of the factory and it arrives on site. And so those are kind of some of the creative stories and connectedness that the materials reuse ecosystem provides.
Nice, yeah. Okay, so those are all the key steps, or some of the key steps. And so with that, what do you guys think are new practices that are required or needed for builders and designers to move towards a more circular economy? We know step 1 is being an anarchist. So what is step 2?
So I actually called my decon SPW foreman in Southern California on the way here to really ask. It's a newer service for us, like the last 2 years. So he certainly, there's been a lot of training and improved skill sets that have been acquired. And I was super impressed with what he sent back. Maybe he used AI, I don't know, but I was like, whoa, sounds really fancy. So he said material identification and assessment. So they are daily going in there, being able to identify different materials, the dismantling techniques required to disassemble these materials. And that has definitely been a new skill for him and his team. Strategic sequencing. Don't they sound fancy? Yeah. Like, let's put this in a job description. I think this is amazing. Yeah, planning the order of disassembly is obviously super important, right? And that's definitely a skill set versus traditional construction. And then selective dismantling techniques, new tool and equipment mastery. So sometimes we need to invest in equipment that can help us dismantle or deconstruct some of these buildings versus, just go in there with the bulldozer. So this is just an example of some of the skills that he sent me, which I, obviously any GC, I think, we're very much, and any organization, an emphasis on workforce development and training and really having kind of the apprenticeship program. So like Kathleen mentioned at the beginning, like this does offer jobs, right? This is new jobs, green jobs, and new skills that everyone out there, especially in the construction industry, is kind of itching and chomping at the bit to master, so.
I love everything you said. And it's very aligned to mine is not as fancy words. But yeah, I think definitely one thing that we see a lot is the lack of planning and then acting. Also, there's a lot of noise. We get tons of requests for proposals and not necessarily everybody take the action. So that's very important, is to take the action. So planning definitely ahead of time. Plan ahead of time. Another thing that we see a lot as looking specs, policies, or any kind of design documentation is the lack of clear goals. That's extremely important, especially on your specs, any construction documentation. Make sure that all your stakeholders know what they're doing, know where they're going, and they're all on the same page-ish. So that's very important. And then, of course, communicate, different communications. We have a lot of programs and initiatives to communicate also with the subcontractors. Think about the people that are on a daily basis in the construction. They are part of this. They are the ones that are disassembling the building, or they're receiving the materials, and could be very wasteful if they don't understand their role and their importance of their work in this puzzle. Have an action plan, which is very aligned to what you're saying. Align with the project schedule. Work with your project schedule, including the design and the construction. That's very important. Again, we've seen those things being implemented, and it's very successful. It's way less stressful when you have your plans and your goals aligns to the project schedule. Ideally, we should start with the developer, the building owner, the investors. They are normally the ones that are the visionaries, and they kind of bring the message down to everyone. That's very important. Also, another thing that I'm very passionate about, it's data. Focused on data. Use data for in your favor. And then think about when you're building a building or a facility, think about designing, think about something that it's not going to be expired, right? So how can that facility, that building could be resilient, adaptive, to be reused, that can be transformed? I think that's another keyword to keep in mind today. It's transformation.
Cool, thanks. You know, as the structural engineer on the team, I think we like to step back a little bit, and before you even, there's talk about the circularity, or how do you design for deconstruction, and are you using connections that are easier to disassemble, and even before you get there, is there something that we could have done to more appropriately retrofit or keep the structure to begin with? And I think that's where our focus really, where we like to focus a little bit more in terms of are the code committees that are all the code committees actually talking to each other? We're becoming more and more strict on the seismic accelerations increase every code cycle, where there's more and more restrictions in structural codes. So it seems like we're a little bit diverging in terms of being able to retrofit effectively, and as well as meeting this circular, with all the green codes especially. And so where we try to put our energy is before we even get there, and is there a better approach to being able to make a retrofit possible? But so that's, I think, where as the engineer plays a role. If that's not possible, then even in new builds, there's talks around connections and making the disassembly easier. There's discussion around, just being able to grade materials or specify, test them and prove that they're safe to be reused. So there are little steps we can take within once it's not able to retrofit. Again, I think our passion is that we love to preserve architecture, and we would hope that would work first. But we are, just also then bringing skill sets to the rest of the team in terms of being able to verify if materials are acceptable for structural reuse as well.
And I think what's really hard about the deconstruction or circularity in our industry is that we have to start thinking about materials at concept or schematic design. That's not how we typically do it. You get a lot of pushback when you try to make designers, make a choice before they're ready. But, we've been doing some deconstruction and circularity on museums in San Diego, a high-profile museum here in Los Angeles, I was saying the LA General Hospital, projects in New York, luxury retail on Beverly Hills. So just some ideas that we've done after circularity assessments. One is looking at parking garages. Don't just tear it down. Can we look at the steel? Can we work with the structural engineers to cut off the ends and see what we can redo with that? We've looked at, we've got a lot of glass and these, flat plane glass. We check it for lead and other hazardous materials. Can we reuse it? Can we take it back to a manufacturer who can reuse that flat glass somehow? Or can we partner with concrete manufacturers who are pushing pozzolan, glass admixtures? What does that look like? Does it work in New York? Does it work in LA? We started looking at, brick, in some projects. We've got a whole lot of brick. Turns out it's like 1940s brick. People don't like it. It doesn't have that kind of reuse. So then we ended up sending it up to a terracotta manufacturer to say, can you reuse this brick to make new terracotta for us? Maybe that didn't work. We couldn't get the temps we wanted. Then we send it out to the landscape. Hey, can you reuse this? Don't stop with the first thing. Keep pressing. Can you turn it into terrazzo? We see terrazzo in a lot of our projects. Can we take some of that glass, take some of the terracotta? It's really interesting around buildings in the 1940s, whether it's East Coast or West Coast, we see this beautiful glazed ceramic tile. Hopefully in LA, we can bring that industry back. But what can you do with that? It's really hard to scrape that stuff off. You're gonna have to, you can't upstream everything. Yes, the old lumber, we have to do it, but there's so many of our materials that yes, maybe we can crush them or turn them into something else. That's still a good thing. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good here, and, I think what Richard was saying too, it doesn't have to go back into your new building. It doesn't have to go into your friend's building. What can we do to get these materials to the communities, right? It might be as simple as a generator that's not at the end of its life. Could be the HVAC equipment, the little window units. Could that go to affordable housing somewhere? Can we get furniture to schools? Can we get material to be made into something for public art? The world is our oyster and we're not eating oysters. You know what I mean? Like, we really need to be thinking about this early on. What can we do? Maybe you can only do 2 things. That's better than none. So that, I would say, is like the next step.
That's awesome. Just to build on this idea of perfection, or this, as a contractor, I sometimes wake up at night dreaming of little pieces of blue tape stuck on the walls, all the things I need to fix. But the idea, I remember early on in the conversation around LEED and FSC was like, oh, we're going to have like 20, 30, we don't know how much waste, because all this FSC wood is going to be, random colors and shapes, and we won't be able to say it's going to be, the American woodworking premium, and so it was like, how do you do this? And and that was 2003, 2004, right? And I think the idea was that, obviously the availability of certified and sustainably harvested lumber has gone up, which has been fantastic. But I think also we've maybe tried to get away from perfection as the goal of, just uniformity, consistency, and opened up the door for applications that are not 100% perfect, because I think, and not that they're less quality or less durable or any of the other components. It's just that we have, in favor of, and I would somehow work this into this project specifications and the sort of mock-ups and expectations of the projects, that there are parts and pieces of it that we can create a new standard, because one of the other standards and priorities is material reuse.
Okay. I don't want to push you guys to consolidate your answers because they're all so beautiful, but I do want to get through 2 more questions. So this first one is about time. So space and time and how the two integrate with each other during a project's timeline are incredibly important for deconstruction and circularity projects. And some public buildings have a lot of space and time. So what is the role that local governments can play in filling the gaps between what is required to have a successful project and what is currently available?
Yes, space and time. This is GC's dream right there. So I will just quickly say, like, the alignment with the schedule, it's not just saying like in demolition phase, like words matter. So we have really made a concerted effort at DPR to change that to deconstruction salvageability, so that our trade partners, when they see they're not just seeing demolition, they're seeing an adequate period of time associated with salvageability of that building, which has really helped. But the other thing I think we can really use some public partnership on is to help kind of with the space side of things. That's a huge challenge when you're deconstructing a commercial building, okay? We don't always have access to a lot of space to store these materials on site. And we always just say, we only have room for this many dumpsters, right? And so you're talking to fill a freight truck for, say, carpet tile or ACTs to go back to the manufacturer. You're talking about 40 to 45 pallets, right, at least. And that's to fill the truck, right? And that's to cover freight costs. So imagine like how much space that actually takes up when you're deconstructing a building. And so I think where we need some support too is to have requirement for our owners, if deconstruction is part of like the permitting process in some way, or an ordinance, to also be looking about the space that's needed for those cases. Another thing is just for getting materials, like it isn't just recycling materials and crushing up materials, like you were mentioning, Kathleen. Again, that service doesn't just happen overnight for us. We can't just call us, get a container there on site immediately. There's usually a week needed to do that. Again, we're running out of space on site. So I think those are ways that we can really use, the private sector can really use some public support. And the other thing is costs. So for us, deconstruction isn't always the most cost effective, regardless of what we're getting back with the salvageability revenue. Just the other day, we got a project in Irvine, which is, we're trying to palletize carpet tile, but the carpet tile, the existing carpet tile is glued on so strong. I'm like, we've got floor scrapers out there. We have spent in the last 2 weeks $70,000 on labor just to do that. Now we're going to continue to do it, right? But I definitely get the phone calls of like, Celia, like, where, you know, and then again, this is a new skill set. These are new tools. These are new equipments. And like, yes, maybe we should have gone in and actually tried to pull up the carpet tiles in our salvageability tour or walkthrough just to see how fastened they are. So just an example there from the contractor side of things of some real challenges that we face on the daily.
Awesome. For me, like working different projects, public projects, private projects, I see the government as being a role model. You guys can change the world. That's a perfect example for the city of Santa Monica. It's beautiful to see that, how the government has been influencing, you know, investors and developers. So I think if you do it, like the government will do it, the other ones will follow. So that's really magical. Also, in terms of demolition, very important to understand your demo plans, your schedule, your budget, and your limitations. Definitely perform audits and material surveys before you go and demo the material. We've done that at the Contra Costa County. We literally got, when I got in the building, everybody left their desks and moved to another building, the new administrative building, and they left everything there, papers. You can imagine, paper clips, everything. We had to come up with a solution. And we had no money, by the way. I will talk more about that. Just look at the building and think as a resource. That's a very important mindset that we need to start, that I've been fighting for many years, is that waste is not waste, it's a resource. Materials are resources. It's not because it's at the RS dumpster, it's because it's a waste. It's a resource. It will be a resource for another industry, what we call like industrial symbiosis. It will be a resource for somebody. We just need to keep pushing. Create a very detailed logistics. That's a very important thing, especially when you have a zero lot line building. I can talk more about, if somebody want to talk more about this, what a logistic plan look like. I'm happy to talk more about that. We're not gonna, yeah. And have of course, as part of your logistic plan, make sure you have stakeholders and budget in your front, including like the public works, that they were helping us a lot at the Contra Costa County, the city departments, and etc. And then the other thing, talking about like one thing I noticed working again with private and public projects is that normally public projects have like a tighter budget, but they have a longer schedule. So different than private projects, we normally have a tight schedule, but more money available. And so because of that, try to use that in your favor. If you have more time, you can have more time to plan and do the right things. The Contra Costa, again, just want to bring it up, a perfect example of storage. We had the entire building, all the resources there available, and the county has no storage at all. Some counties have a storage that we can use for materials. We didn't have that. So what we did, I worked with the Public Works, and we actually reuse empty buildings, the basement of the building that we were demolishing as a storage. So be creative. Use like a parking lot that hasn't been is not being used. So don't get out of the meeting as a no, as an answer. You're gonna figure it out. You're not gonna have the answer right away, but eventually you will be creative and you'll figure it out the answer.
Making sure Kathleen has time to answer.
I'll be quick. Cities, we need to change economic development. Can we get biomaterial innovation? Can we think about, we need to bring linoleum to California. It needs to be manufactured here. Yes, we need local manufacturing startups here, and wherever other cities you guys are from. We need to be thinking about, not only the new stuff, but how can we bring back the old stuff? How can we bring back manufacturing tile, terracotta, adobe brick here in LA? We also need to be doing analysis of our vacant buildings, our vacant lots. That's all value, right? Like, we're just not integrating our industry, the AEC industry, into economic development. There's jobs to unlock, there's value, there's so much we can do. So if the city policy, maybe it's not the brass tacks of deconstruction, but how do we get this economic engine running and get great jobs for people so they can live here and not have to live out in Palmdale, right? Like, let's get working class jobs back here, and let's do it through our industry.
Shall we move on? Okay. I think this one, and we'll end on this question unless we have more time. But I think this one is like super, super, super important because unfortunately money is important. So since we are talking about circular economy, now is the moment we're all waiting for, the economy part of the puzzle. What are your experiences on past projects with respect to budgets or just the economy part in general?
Okay, I've kind of already spoken about this, so I'll be quick with my answer. But so obviously, labor is a costly item in construction for us and a huge part of our budget. So we try to obviously plan early enough so we can really get a hold of understand what that labor cost is going to be for us and make sure that we're pricing the job accordingly. The no storage space, obviously, that also can get costly for us. Long hauls to material resource centers or facilities, if we're taking source separation of materials somewhere, those costs add up and they're absorbed by our haulers, which is absorbed by us as GCs, which in turn is obviously absorbed by the owner. So those can be quite costly. So again, making sure once, in the pre-con stage, when we're in the design to deconstruction stage, that we're thinking about that as well, right? Where is this actually going? And how much would that cost? Late scope changes always. And really, if we're only looking at kind of those low value materials, if there's materials where there's not a market for it, that can get extremely costly. We had a case just the other day on a project here in LA where a lot of the carpet tile was actually not made of any recyclable materials or fibers that could be taken back by the manufacturer. So we had to put it in a dumpster to go to the landfill. That means higher tipping fees for us, higher volume of waste. We don't like to do that, but it's just a case of sometimes there's just no value to the material inside a building, and that goes back to really trying to design our buildings for the end of life in mind, right, and the disposal piece in mind. It's high level. There you go.
Sure. Yeah. Those are all great points and great challenges. And, I think I mentioned earlier that, we have somewhat of a higher risk, lower margin business in general contracting. And, as a result, we're one of the least innovative industries in the world, right? We're very slow to change. I see a lot of nodding heads, so that's unfortunate that everyone shares that opinion. I speak for myself. Sorry, DPR's out way. No, it's just a well-known fact, right? That we don't have a ton of extra money to invest in research and development, and so when something new and innovative comes along, we look at the risk associated with it, right? And anytime we can partner in a mutual way for something that the project wants to do together. That would be beneficial, right? Like, because when you look at labor and materials, and that's why tariffs and other, sorry, I said it, are challenging, and material escalation is challenging because typically when you're a builder, the materials are something you can rely on. As you can identify that cost, you can call somebody up, they'll tell you exactly what it costs, and then it will come, and that's sort of the reliable part of your cost. The labor, not so much, right? Like, you can run into challenges, rework, any sort of thing. So if you introduce uncertainty in both components, then you are driving up the risk profile of the project. And if that's done just as like, hey, general contractor, construction manager, go figure that out, then we're going to have to figure out how to protect ourselves against that. And that's usually adding cost. And so, there are contractual mechanisms or partnership opportunities between in a more collaborative way that could help reduce those costs, that could return those potential savings if we do allocate contingencies for those to the customer, incentivize those types of behaviors, because it is, we want to do the right thing. We want to be innovative. We want to be out ahead of the curve. And sometimes we just need, we need the right customers, and I think we've heard that already, to sort of co-create those new things with.
Yeah, and real quick, I think something that is helping or that we can do to help economy, we've been working with Jeff and Brady at Angel City Lumber on a couple projects in terms of, I have a beautiful staircase and front door in my own home, but aside from that, we're specifying wood from Angeles National Forest for projects here in West Hollywood. And, it's not your typical wood species that the building department is used to seeing, so there's a little bit of education there. But again, it's using local product, local businesses, funneling that money back into our local economy, and just I think that's one of our focuses at the moment, is just being able to make sure materials we're specifying and how is that impacting just jobs here, and we love, and then supporting the work that Angel City Lumber is doing as well.
I have a long answer, but I will summarize. I tend to talk a lot, and I'm so passionate that I can go on and on. I think for me, a good example, something I always think about, again, 20 years ago, I remember doing lead projects and shopping around for solar panels. Oh my God, it was so expensive, solar panels in Brazil. They all come from Germany. And then as we see the demand growing, solar panels start getting more affordable. So that's the same thing for circularity. As more of you guys live this event today and start talking and requesting this and demanding this from your clients or from your team and coworkers and manufacturers, your entire supply chain and stakeholders, the more affordable, the more opportunities we will have on a local level and a large scale level. So that's very important that each of us start putting this out there so we can actually make economy being flourish and actually thriving.
Kathleen, do you want to add anything really quickly?
No. Anarchists don't like money.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, I think that will conclude our panel with the famous final words of Kathleen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think that was so informative. Thank you so much.
The only thing I'll be remembered for.
All right, thank you. If you need to move your seat or do anything during the presentation, no problem at all. We are definitely working out when to close the windows and blinds to let the air conditioning work, and when to open the doors and windows to let the ocean breeze work. So hopefully you'll bear with us as we get that right. My name is Shannon Perry. I'm the city's Chief Sustainability Officer. We are your municipal scale circularity panel. True to form for local government, we are going to just stand here right in between what you're doing and what you want to do, which is get to the table work. So we'll try to be as interesting and non-bureaucratic about it as we can. I have 4 amazing panelists. We're going to do self-introductions. Then we'll walk you through a little bit of the program and policy work that we love, the projects that inspire us. We'll talk a little bit about lessons learned from failure. We'll define circularity for you. We've talked about it in so many different ways. I thought it would be interesting to hear a succinct summary of the whole field of practice or a specific part of it from our specialists. And then we'll leave some time for them to ask each other questions because they probably have more interesting questions than I do. So we'll get started with Rita.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rita Kamploth. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for LA County. And I don't know if we want to get into more too much, but so the Sustainability Office, just for context, works on policy. We're a pretty small team, but we created the sustainability plan for the county, which is very broad and comprehensive, and really work very closely with our county departments as well as our Board of Supervisors and external partners to kind of move forward on those sustainability goals.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Freeman. I'm the policy advisor for the City of Boulder. So wanted to say thank you for welcoming a mountain girl to the beautiful ocean. It's nice to change the scenery. Well, right now we've got the ocean in some ways. Outside of work, one of the things that I've really reflected back on in my life is I grew up in Phoenix, and when I would drive with my family up north, we drive up the I-17 and I saw a mountain being mined. And I remember that it was about in high school, and I drove past it. I was like, this is the last time that I'm going to see that mountain. And it kind of stuck with me that this idea of gone is gone. And we say there's no way, but there kind of is that a way in the way we think about materials. And that's kind of stuck with me, is that if we don't appreciate the materials that we have, and we don't respect them, those natural resources are going to be lost. And so it's kind of reflecting back on my life and saying, how can I contribute to this? So just kind of arc a career, I went to Japan, I took on something hard, went to a country where I couldn't speak the language. I said, you know what, I can take this on. I got my master's in sustainability, have public and private sector experience, but it's this commitment to materials management that really drives my passion. And I'm really excited to share with you about the policy work and vision that we have around creating a circular economy and respecting our natural resources and respecting the built environment as we look towards how we can meet our climate action goals and how that contributes to that city level success as well.
Lawrence Schilling with the Reuse People of America. I am the commercial projects manager presently for them. The Reuse People, if you're not familiar with them, is a 501c3 environmental designated nonprofit organization. We operate 2 building material reuse centers in the Bay Area. I'm actually not a public employee, so I'm not sure whether I'm really fitting on this stage, but we do in the Bay Area manage the city of Palo Alto's deconstruction surveys. They have a deconstruction ordinance, and we're presently participating in a pilot program with the city of San Francisco as they explore the possibility of implementing a deconstruction ordinance. So on that level, I have some experience in the space, and anything beyond that we can talk about later.
Hey everyone, Zach Gators. I'm a senior vice president, also an architect at the New York City Economic Development Corporation. We are a nonprofit organization. However, we do work for the city of New York, overseeing all economic development policy. I work in the capital program and oversee a portfolio of many public projects totaling over $1 billion in value, one of which is the Spark Kips Bay project, which I was thrilled to hear the previous panel talk about. Also oversaw the development of our design and construction, our circular design and construction guidelines, and happy to talk about that today.
I'm looking forward to giving you the chance to talk about that today. We've heard a few things today. Dream boldly, be an anarchist. I'd like to add be an anarchist for people on the planet. And there is no way. Things only go away. And I really appreciate those observations. Circularity, as you've noted, happens at different scales. So we've looked at products, we've looked at materials, we've looked at buildings, and now we're talking about municipal scale. I love municipal scale. It's a phenomenal scale to work at. We are big enough to have impact. We're small enough to see meaningful change. And we're able to support, create a bridge to enable the type of innovative work that happens at the program and project scale. But we're also able to look ahead or to ask and encourage state and federal leaders to enable legislation and opportunities to bring the type of things that we're seeing at the product and at the building scale to larger organizations like cities, states, and ideally federal government. So with that, I thought it would be really interesting to ask our panelists in a sentence to describe circularity. And we'll go the opposite direction this time.
I mean, circularity to us is as simple as keeping materials out of a landfill. Circularity, and my aspiration, is being maybe a positive response to what I see as a deficit of connectivity we have as a country, and by that meaning speaking to the values that people hold on all sides of the political spectrum, values like responsibility, stewardship, resourcefulness, and ideally we can all connect to that. And then finally, as an architect, the way that I like to think about it and talk about it is, every building is a story built out of everybody who designed it, who built it, who frequent it and use it. And what we, and maybe not so much everybody in this room, but as a society, don't realize is that once we remove that building or deconstruct it, that story doesn't end. It could continue at the bottom of a landfill, or we can pick it up and build the sustainable future that we need to survive.
I'm a literal listener to a fault. Yesterday, Shannon said she wanted us to answer the question, what does circularity mean to you, in one sentence? So I was like, how do I do that in one sentence? And so I went through and tried to construct a sentence that was a long sentence. And I could read it to you. No, it's all good. No, it was a great answer. But I'm going to scratch that sentence because it was and I guess what it means to me now, because I think it's still a work in progress, is the last panel. Y'all were speaking my language, the language that I've been speaking for a long time, and now it's like a language that's kind of developing, and y'all are starting to speak it. And I haven't figured it all out. I don't have all the words, but we're all starting to talk the same language, and that's really refreshing and great for what I've been doing for a while.
So for me, with circularity, it's not just incorporating design principles, but it's design plus policy, where we're looking at ways that we can prevent waste. We can see it as a resource for the next thing, that we are looking at how the ecological side and the built environment interact so that we can keep those materials at that highest and best use for as long as possible. Oftentimes we know we can't recycle our way out of these problems. we have to think about how these buildings are that resource. That is, in a sense, our built resource. And we want to keep that material in use, in circulation for as long as possible. And that's what we're all working towards. So yeah, I would agree with Lorenz. It is a work in progress. We are working to bring that together for all.
Trying to add to that, lots of good definitions here, but I think, so just broadly, I didn't follow the one sentence direction either. But it's just, again, broadly speaking, getting away from that like one-way flow of materials, right? Where it's like resources, useful product, and then waste, and thinking about the waste as like the start of a new product cycle, right? But I would add to that too, that we talk about materials mainly, or we've been mainly talking about materials, but you can apply that to water and energy as well, right? So there can be a circular economy when we talk about recycled water. We can think about how are we reusing waste heat from things, which can add to our urban heat issues and cause all sorts of problems. So when I think about circular economy generally, and the context of like pollution or other problems, I think, you know, like sort of a failure to think in a circular way is kind of the source of a lot of our pollution problems. Ultimately, it's like a bad design or bad materials management. So I think it really has a broad application across a lot of things.
It's not lost on any of us that the sustainability professionals who can't, or the bureaucrats who can't follow directions are sustainability professionals, because it means we're here to break free. On that note, let's talk about the programs and policies where you are really looking at sustainability, circular economy, embedded carbon in your day-to-day practice, like really the bulk of your expertise in this space. Would you like?
I'm holding the mic, yeah. Okay, well, again, I'm a policy person, and because it's very timely, I'm going to talk about our sustainability plan. It was first adopted in 2019, but we're actually revising it and are about to release the 5-year version. It's going to go to our Board of Supervisors at the end of October, if anybody's interested. So, you know, we're really excited. It does kind of deal with sustainability issues very broadly. It tries to take like sort of an interconnected look at all of these things. So there isn't exactly a waste chapter, but one of the things that we revised this time around was to try to include more about circularity. So whether it's, you know, looking at reuse and repair as well, a part of circularity can just be extending the life of products that we already have. Also, you know, supporting like some of the things that we're talking about in terms of how can the county sort of support businesses that are, you know, working on like circularity. How can we prepare a workforce for that as well? That's one of the things I'm most excited about, which we haven't delved into. Somebody, I think in the last panel, mentioned economic development, the importance of that. And I think that's a real gap is, you know, a lot of our efforts towards workforce development have really focused, because we're a huge county, are looking at like the opportunity areas where there's a lot of high growth. But I think if we really want to bring about a green economy, we have a real opportunity here in LA to kind of be a model for that. And I think, you know, now more than ever, we need to be a model for that, right? To show how we can not just say no to things, but we can really show people the example of what a really sustainable green region can be.
With the City of Boulder, we started by looking at our climate action plan. So once again, policy really is the driver, and policy for us continues to be that driver. So we set goals to be net zero by 2030 and by 2040 hit a carbon positive city. But how do you accomplish that? You can set these goals, and what we ended up doing is we hired a contractor to look at what our inputs are. So in 2018, we commissioned a study with Metabolic. They're based out of Amsterdam. And we looked at and found that the highest point of emissions came from our built environment. So if you took the combination of energy, food, transportation, all of those sources of emissions combined did not even equal the impact of the built environment. So if we are going to make even a small incremental change in reducing our emissions to hit that net zero and carbon positive city goal, we needed to kind of shift that focus to the built environment, looking at the resources that are being brought into our buildings, but also how are they leaving our buildings and how are we managing them, whether it's through recycling and then obviously for reuse. So the way that we are focused on that is through our deconstruction policy. I always love to give Palo Alto kudos as well, because as of July 1st of 2020, both Boulder and Palo Alto had the same start date for our deconstruction ordinances, and they are the two most progressive deconstruction ordinances in the US. It covers all residential, okay. Sorry. So it covers all residential and commercial buildings, kind of irregardless of date. And we're looking to get 75% or more of those building materials diverted for reuse and recycling across the board. So where we are at, as of like last month, we're at 82.6% diversion across all projects over the last 5+ years. Things are going really well, and there's also things I would love to improve. So I think looking at that program and understanding what that is really helps to inform the policy and the direction that we will be going in the future, which I will, I think, talk about soon. I don't know. I can't remember the quite order, but obviously I was very involved with the Boulder Hospital deconstruction and the material reuse out of that. So are we talking about that in a little bit, or?
I promise to ask you what you learned from failure and the things you don't want to leave here without saying. So you'll have 2 chances.
Okay,
Cool.
I couldn't remember the word.
It's okay. We're in it together.
What was the question? What am I supposed to be talking about now?
What do you want them to know? Your signature, program, policy, and
reuse is at the commercial scale is hard. I really wanted to jump into the last panel conversation and what you guys were talking about, because you guys are seriously, you're, I don't know how long you've been grappling with these issues at the commercial scale, the public scale. I feel lucky about 11 years ago to get a call from Google and wound up doing like almost 40 Google TI projects up in the Bay Area and learned a lot. And at that time, also happened to do a 15-acre, 500,000 square foot Clorox R&D facility that was purchased by a corporation, a developer by the name of Neuron. It's now a Costco. But those experiences on that Clorox R&D facility, we literally distributed like 45 semi-trailer loads of salvaged material, both internationally and regionally throughout the state of California and locally into the Bay Area, to about 23 nonprofit organizations. And that was kind of a pattern that we just figured it out over the course of those 35 plus Google projects that we did, some quite large, as large as another couple 100,000 square feet projects. And lose my train of thought here. It's hard, and what we've figured out, the lessons we've learned, are planning is so key. Back to the conversation that was happening on the last panel, getting speccing, doing the site assessments is what we're doing now for the city of Palo Alto, doing full audits, deep dives, and getting those salvage scopes into the bid packages way in advance. You got to plan for that, because if it's the last thing the project's thinking about, because we're also doing the same thing outside of these cities where it's mandated, and they come to us kind of last minute, and the chances of you achieving a whole lot in an ad alternate bid scope is not great. The last thing for the moment that I'd like to emphasize, again going back to the last panel, is that don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. How we try to structure our surveys and audits is to tier salvage targets and to group materials, so that depending on the project goal, the budget, the timeline, that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. You can do something and save materials that are significant and achieve something significant without necessarily feeling like you have to save everything, right? So that's how we kind of approach our salvage audits, and we present the generator, as we call them, that is the client, the owner, with a kind of an RFP worksheet to get competitive bidding from even abatement subs, think about that, subcontractors to do the salvage, in addition to soft demo contractors. And if you're interested in doing structural salvage, heavy demo contractors. But that's, we'll leave it there for now.
So as I mentioned before, my signature item are the circular design and construction guidelines that we developed at EDC. And similar to what Olivier was saying in the first panel, we developed them for ourselves. And we saw a problem that we wanted to solve and did not find a solution out there. So we had to figure it out ourselves. On a lot of our public projects, we try to find reuse opportunities wherever we can. And we found some successes, and I'm sure you all have examples of those, from all places that you're from. But we wanted to implement it on a project-wide scale. And we think that these guidelines really answer a lot of questions that have been brought up today, particularly around planning, about understanding goals, about getting everybody on the same page. So I really encourage everybody to use them, because it is really well thought out. We put it together over the course of almost 2 years. It's been out there for almost 2 years. And every project has an owner, every project has a designer and a construction manager, constructor. And it has clear roles and responsibilities for all three of those parties throughout a project life cycle. So starting out with establishing your goals, understanding what you have to work with, and I hear the term circularity audit being said today, and I don't know if that came from us or where that came from, but that so key. Understanding what you have, and then planning for what you want to do with what you have, and then ultimately diverting as much materials as possible from landfill. We have 3 goals that are in our guidelines that are suggestions, which is a 75% reduction or diversion from landfill of all materials. When it comes to soil and concrete, that bumps up to 95%. And then we have a goal of a minimum 25% of what we call low carbon materials. And you may ask, what is that? So the new materials that we're bringing into the project, ensuring that compared to baseline for whatever those materials are, it is a low carbon version. And we use the Rocky Mountain Institute recommendations for that embodied carbon reduction at low or no cost impacts. And that is specific percentages for steel, concrete, and aluminum and other materials. And so, again, it's now a guide we're using on our projects. Was thrilled to see on the last panel our project partners from Borough Happold and Skanska. I was working with us on the Spark Kips Bay project to implement this which is our first pilot project. We are now using these guidelines on all of our projects, and they all can be tailored to whatever scale, whatever size, and whatever aspirations that projects have.
Thank you. Of course, I just took a sip of water. I really appreciate you sharing your signature project. One of the things that we talked about and that we've seen people talking about on each of our panels is not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We are leading a movement. We are changing the way that we think about product manufacturing, deconstruction, waste. And so in that, there will be challenges and there will be failures. Can you share with us something that you've learned either from failure or something that you have learned or appreciate from a new perspective now that your project or your policy is in action?
Can I just keep rolling on the
Absolutely.
guidelines? All right. So implementing them, and a lot of complexities have surfaced, especially with the help of our Borough Happold and Skanska partners. And we realize so much work is simply phone calls, and because we have these materials and you have to find a taker. You can't. I mean, I would love to see a project that actually reuses all of the materials, but especially in New York, whenever you have a lot of times, in our case, a real change of scale of what is on the site, the reuse opportunities there are limited, and also there is a limitation of space and time constraints. We do public projects, but and they are stretched out, maybe perhaps because there are more oversight financially and design-wise than private projects, but it is still time constraint is still a big thing. So the big three complexities that we see, and that I hope everybody can understand as you want to implement circularity on your project, so that these become road bumps and not roadblocks, is number one, the material separation and the complexities associated with that. We're really at the forefront of of reuse, and so separating materials, especially if they have anything hazardous on it, is something that is really inventive and really figured out on the spot, and there needs to be space for that. A lot of that really changes the way that you approach probes and investigations. Secondly, timing, and that is also due to space constraints. So matching up the availability of our materials with whoever's going to take it, minimizing any storage costs. And of course, in New York City, that is an incredible premium. And then thirdly, certainty, and a lot of around schedule and especially cost certainty. How do you estimate the reuse of materials during design? That we confronted that face on, and originally didn't have an answer for it. But our design teams and Skanska and our construction teams are all like really creatively. We're all figuring it out together. And so you have to build in the right contingencies, not building in too many, find that balance, but understand that there are ways to mitigate it around alternates, around the way that you structure your bids to give yourself off ramps if things pan out to be like the example on the previous panel about carpet tiles being much harder to pull up than anticipated. You got to be able to have the off ramps so then that doesn't bog you down financially and schedule wise. And so that has been the driving force behind a lot of the investigations and probes on the Spark project. But yeah, keeping in mind those three things and understanding that you're going to confront them because they can be incredibly intimidating whenever you hit them face on, I think can set you up for a lot more success.
That's a really interesting observation. It's interesting to hear you frame it in the way of the difference between when you need to pivot and when you need to pursue more. And I really appreciate that observation.
Yeah, I think just going back to emphasizing scope development in terms of salvage for the purpose of getting tighter costing bids from subcontractors who are self-perform teams, the better quantities, descriptions of how to handle materials that in the case of our program, we're scoping out the salvage, the quantity through an audit, and the handling materials, and then we're picking them up and distributing them from the job sites, whether that's taking them back to our warehouses or distributing them to somebody else. It's really essential that you put those handling instructions for subcontractors for both bidding purposes, but also it's just so absolutely key that they are managing and handling materials well. Because if you're shopping for recipients, the last thing you can do is deliver poorly handled materials because you've kind of killed yourself for any future distribution. Just recently, I was just pleased after making about 20 calls to that many school districts. We did a project in San Ramon former PG&E facility, which was vacated right at the outset of the pandemic, and they had been in there for maybe 18 months, but had retrofitted all their lighting, of course, and there were all these, basically unused 2x4 LED retrofit kits in the ceiling. About 500 of them, and so we thought, I've never saved this before. Let's make some phone calls. Who would want these? And so we found Fremont Unified. Said, hey, after a bunch of calls, they took all the light fixtures, and that I just felt that was a nice little win. Yeah.
I'm gonna, I guess, start a little bit with one of our big projects. So with the Boulder Community Hospital, it was a 260,000 square foot deconstruction. The city bought that property in 2018, and we needed to figure out how we were going to manage it. It's a combination of adaptive reuse, but also realizing the hospital needed to come down. There was nothing that we could do with how it was constructed. So some of the highlights was that we did salvage with KLNA engineers. We salvaged that 584 structural I-beams. Those have all been matched to new projects. 89 of them went directly into the rebuilding into the new construction of Fire Station 3 in Boulder. So it's amazing that we were able to do that. We were able to, with the mechanical pumps and sumps, we utilized auction houses to get those back into circulation and reuse. Over 500 grab bars were donated to different senior citizen organizations to help make a community impact to that as well. The concrete shell of the building was actually crushed on site, weighed, and then used as the backfill that we needed for the very large the basement fill area. And we actually needed more, so we matched with another commercial deconstruction that was happening up the road. They just trucked their concrete up to us, and we're able to crush that and save on hauling and disposal costs for all of that. I say that, and it's a great win, but we also kind of think, how can we do this in the future? Once again, transportation, storage, and where those materials are, everything worked out well for us and really contributed to us being successful in this. But we knew that at points in times we might need to pivot and move beyond that. We haven't been able to see, it is city owned, we were policy driven, we wanted to use this as an example, but we haven't necessarily seen those same stories of success in other commercial projects. They might be hitting that recycling rate, but they're hitting that through those heavy weighted materials. So when I'm thinking about the policy and how well it's being implemented, we're sitting at about 62% full compliance. So those people hitting 75% or more and 3 or more building material types. We're also seeing that contractors are picking and choosing what they want to do, and they're leaning towards the asphalt and concrete, which we just lumped together as aggregates. In the past, they would try and say asphalt and concrete were separate ones, and they were like, that hits 2 material types, and it was really us trying to look at both the policy and the program and see how do these line up. So things that we're trying to do now is focus on how much is being reused, how is that being identified, and really kind of trying to make some changes to our ordinance to say all materials with known end markets versus 3 material types or more, and figuring out how we can show that economic value back to the contractors or really to that property owner. So can you take advantage of current IRS tax code as a means to say we can help offset the cost of deconstruction versus traditional demolition? And not only is it getting materials back to the community, often at about a third of the cost of new and virgin materials. But those are benefits that property owner can actually realize in a true economic sense as well. So we're really trying to look at not just the why we're doing it from an environmental side, but we're trying to show that the economic benefit back to our entire community is a strong reasoning as well. So it's always a work in progress. We're doing really great work, and I see that policy is that driver, but there's always something more that we can all do, and I'm just really encouraged by those conversations.
Well, I'm going to a little bit echo what you said, just in terms of, I was going to speak to it from a policy standpoint, but I think you covered it, so I'll try to keep it brief. But I think generally in terms of lessons learned, I mean, a lot of the policies that we've put forward are often coming on the backs of failed attempts to do the same policies. But every time we attempt, we kind of learn something new about new concerns or new issues that help us like sort of refine things and come back with better answers. That said, I think, you know, frequently, especially in LA, which is so beautiful and diverse and has so many different aspects to it, a lot of the pushback we get are, you know, like, what about this? What about this specific thing? What about this specific business? Your policy doesn't cover them or doesn't work for them. And, you know, again, that's a case of where you could either take that and say, well, we've got to like just make sure this is ironclad and we're not going to try to pass something until we have an answer to every single thing, or, you know, you try to build in the flexibility to sort of work with folks on an individual basis and allow enough authority at the staff level to kind of make those decisions, so it's not always going back and rewriting something. A lot of the approach that we've taken with the recent ordinances related to sustainability is leaving like a very long on-ramp to get to actual enforcement, which sometimes we get criticized for, but it allows us to really go out and do the broad education with specific impacted folks that we wouldn't be able to in like a normal stakeholder engagement process, and also like have people come to us and work with them and really take more of that like one-on-one kind of work. And I think that's been really successful, especially we put forward a plastics ordinance, and having that lead time gave us time to like actually go out to every restaurant that was impacted and see what was working and what wasn't working for them, allowed them time to apply for exemptions. But we also wrote the policy in a way such that when technology and materials became available, we could start like tightening that down, you know, and asking people to actually come into compliance. So I think it's just that balance of, you know, seeing your end goal and that ideal you want to work towards, but also allowing yourself flexibility to kind of get there over time.
Yeah, I think that is a real balance for local governments. Building off of that, I wonder, for those of you who work for local governments or work with local governments, if you can share opportunities that you see in your day-to-day practice for local governments to support the expansion of the circular economy at scale. If you have very specific feedback or very specific asks, and if there are things that those of you who are working at the local government scale now really could benefit from in terms of practitioners or in terms of statewide or larger amplification of your existing efforts. So should we start the project end again?
Something that I heard on the previous panel, and you know, the second of the three you know, big challenges that I mentioned about space and availability, I would focus on local governments providing space for storage of materials, and that's something that we are working on. EDC, we oversee over 6 million square feet of city-owned properties, and we're trying to find those opportunities on those. But I'd say if we can, not make it overly complex, but simply most cities have underutilized sites that they own, and they can be activated. And the beauty of the storage is that it is intended to be temporary. It's not a permanent solution. So I would recommend that for everybody that's in the cities here to find those opportunities.
I'll add to that I heard space, transportation, and matching. And something in my brain tells me that there's a role for local government in that as well.
Yeah, my answer was going to be provide space, but thanks for taking that, Zach. It's all right. But I'll add to that, and it's maybe even considering requiring the incorporation of used materials to some percentage into publicly funded city projects just as a starting point, right? We might imagine that it would be really, possible and beneficial to those of us who are in the lumber salvage world that maybe multifamily or mixed use, low rise developments required 10% of lumber to be reclaimed, right? And maybe it's non-structural, non-load bearing usage, but some percentage that would really help jumpstart the industry. There's a lot of other, in the commercial space, a lot of other products. I think of restroom stainless, grab bars, these kinds of things that don't require and where warranties are not critical. Start maybe considering mandating those, some percentage be reused. But then of course, because the problem is the salvage to real-time usage is almost never aligns perfectly, there's the storage issue, and to provide some storage for a period of time somewhere, this is a key to the whole thing, I think, finally working. I think there's plans for the airport into a park, but maybe they can store some materials.
I heard you might have a hangar.
Yeah.
Just an idea. Nudge, nudge. Yeah, I don't have a solution as a city on where to store material. We're 97% built out, and the cost premium of storing versus like being able to build on has been a challenge for us. But it is equally doesn't mean that challenge has not gone away. We're all trying to figure it out. What I wanted to kind of, I guess, focus a little bit on was that, like, where is policy going, and how are we trying to envision this? And I think, Lorenz, what you were talking about how do we incorporate certain percentages back into new build is a way that we have a deconstruction ordinance, but what do you do with this material? And let's imagine that we solved the storage and transportation and matching problem, like maybe. How do we remove barriers, and how do we encourage architects and designers and developers to incorporate these materials into design? How do we reduce the amount of risk that they have when incorporating salvage materials, to say that I have confidence that the CO at the end of my project is going to be granted because the building inspector understands the materials that have been incorporated into it and where were those sourced from and how are they being used. So 2 policies that we are looking at for the City of Boulder is an embodied carbon policy. We went out to RFP. It's mildly stalled due to funding. But that aside, we will move forward with it, and I've talked with our director about it, and it is planning to move forward. As we look at embodied carbon, we have almost in a sense maximized the amount of operational carbon improvements that we can make through our building code. But we need to, again, refocus on the embodied carbon piece of that. Equally, when I'm talking with our chief building official, that's where we're getting into these ideas of percent of reuse, or can we provide a certain amount of points towards kind of our green points system, that if we reincorporate reuse, we're incentivizing the salvage, we're incentivizing contractors to salvage these materials because they can be reincorporated. The other policy that we're looking at is adopting a salvage lumber policy for hopefully the state of Colorado. Myself and a lady named Anna Perks are working on that, trying to kind of mirror some of the work that's being done or has been done by Oregon and Washington. They have statewide building code that has allowed for structural and non-structural reuse of lumber. Challenge that Colorado has is we don't have a statewide building code, but it doesn't mean that the amount of lumber that is being currently mulched, chipped, and or landfilled, because we're talking statewide, is not a significant problem that we need to address. So we are looking at how to define and use policy as that pathway to set up that framework to say, here is how we can value the lumber that is being salvaged from our buildings. What are the criteria that we need to allow for structural, non-structural reuse? We're not mandating that use. We're not mandating even further deconstruction, but we're allowing that space in which reuse can happen, and we don't have to worry about an individual building inspector at the end of the project going, I'm not really sure about this. And so I think that that is ways that we are trying to think about how policy is supportive of a circular economy.
That was hard to follow. And also, yeah, I know. So applause, that was great. I was just, I'll keep it short also. I was just generally going to say, I think, so your question was just about how government can assist. And I think that that's right. Like policies, I've been taking notes and like getting lots of ideas. And again, I think hearing from practitioners helps realize where we can be sort of supportive in very specific ways through policies. And so we want to, that kind of nuance is really helpful for us, especially when we're used to like operating on the level of like the entire county, all 88 cities and 10 million people. So just that, yeah. So it is incredibly helpful to hear about like these very specific things that we can do. Again, back to the theme of like economic development, it's there's the strategy too of just working specifically with businesses and incentivizing, but there are also other ways I think through policy that we can kind of signal that, who we would like to see and to make it a little bit easier to operate here in the county, so.
Agree. Okay. I told you all I would give you the chance to do your, here's the thing I don't want to get off the panel without having said moment. I also want to begin to engage all of these folks in tabletop work before lunch. So I'm going to ask you for real this time to do it, not in one sentence, but in about a minute. So with about a minute, can you just give your one nugget of wisdom, your one final thought that you really want people to know relative to circular economy at the municipal scale?
We actually care. We're not just trying to make it harder on you. We really see that policy is that vision, and I think that we are trying to figure out how more public-private partnerships can exist. So we want to be partners with you, and I know our hospital deconstruction would not have been possible without our GC and all the subs and the environmental contractors out there as well. So I want to say thank you to them and really to you, because you guys are also those practitioners. But we are your friends. We are trying to figure this out together, and we're all trying to move that needle.
Yeah, incremental change, nothing too radical all at once, I think will fly. The industry has to adapt to these new practices. As I think about the city of San Francisco considering implementing a citywide deconstruction mandate for both commercial and residential, that scares me, honestly. That it's Palo Alto is one thing. The city of San Francisco is huge, and they could really create some problems if they don't think it through and don't support it on the other end with requiring some percentage to be reincorporated, right? Because if all you're requiring is is salvage, but you're not supporting policy to encourage reuse, then the question becomes what happens to all this material. So incremental change, I think, is reasonable. Be careful with policy. It can do more damage sometimes than unintended consequences, if you will. But yeah, that would be my suggestion about small steps.
I have a couple thoughts. The first one, I'm going to maybe push back against the policy thing in a friendly way. We are so, in implementing these guidelines, we're so focused on being cost neutral. And that's a big problem and a big challenge in terms of what we can actually reuse. And the only reason it's not cost neutral is because we are not accounting for all the ecological costs that everybody is putting on on the environment that we are countering. And if you do that, then it is not cost neutral, it's cost positive. And there's a lot of conversations happening, and I want to see policy go towards holding that accountability so that the costs can more accurately be understood. And secondly, in terms of what people can take away, I love these events, and I hope we can all share our stories and our successes and have this interconnectivity of all the projects that are making the progress, so that we have examples to talk about. We can have everyone understand the concepts that we do. Every brick, every board, every beam is a piece of our planet's future, and we need to put them to good use.
Yeah, I guess the takeaway really quick, I guess, we've talked a lot about the role of government as policymaker and regulator, but I think we can also be conveners and connectors. We can help with pilots. There are a lot of different roles that local government can play. So that's what I would want to say here. It is a very hard time budget-wise, and I think one of the great things about circular economy, not again that it's going to be cost neutral, but it is a time where I think that's really going to push us to be more creative about the resources we have. And so I think people will be looking for more opportunities to be creative, and maybe we can see that as a little bit of an opportunity in this time.
Absolutely. I really appreciated that idea of every brick, board, and beam is in service of these outcomes. We also heard people talk a lot about time and place. It's time for us to be done with this panel. But before we are done, I do want to share one thing with you all. Many, many, many years ago, lots of things have happened in this space. Lots of ideas have been generated that have turned into meaningful outcomes and projects on the ground. So I want to tell you a little bit about this space so that you know that in a decade's time, the things that we're talking about here as seed ideas are going to be ripe, robust policies and practices. So in this room, we had the idea that we should have a rating system for sustainable cities so that we could stop comparing ourselves on all this scattered data and actually have a way to encourage our progress and compare each other apples to apples. And we now have LEED for Cities, and the city was the first platinum city in the world. So that started in this room, and you're living in this city now. We had an idea in this room that we should be able to build a living building, that we should be able to go beyond LEED and have a building that was water positive and energy positive, and as the first panelist said, contributed more than it took. And many of you are going to tour our living building later today. That idea started in this room. And then, go ahead. And then we had this crazy idea that we could rewild our beaches and create habitat and restore natural ecosystems and protect ourselves from the inevitable impacts of sea level rise and coastal storms. And after you do your table exercise and after you spend time with your friends and colleagues here during lunch, please take a minute to walk to our beach dune restoration project. If you walk out of the building, you can go left or right, and you will see restored native ecosystems here in Santa Monica. And that's another idea that took root here in this room. So I really want you to know that like this sounds like ideation and it sounds like aspiration right now, but I am 100% confident that people in this room are going to take this ideation and aspiration and make it into projects that we will be celebrating a decade from now. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you all for your wisdom.
Hi, we're going to jump right into the next exercise. So if you are a discussion facilitator, could you please come to the front? Or if you are a note taker, if you could please come to the front.
Stuff like that, and it's totally hard to hold it back in your car, like in ways that are network, and that also creates energy reduction.
Just some sort of like kind of risk management.
Can I say stop adding toxics to everything and start building non-toxic buildings?
Making the things again, and then therefore
right? And this is exactly right.
It's important.
You're all sitting in these tables having incredibly thoughtful, informed conversations. You've built relationships with the people on your tables. You're ideating around these amazing panels that we've had today. And then I have to sit up here, a person who's normally about, yes, connect, ideate, create, and I have to ask you to stop. So I am sorry, I am the voice of no, which is an unfamiliar space for me, but I am going to ask you to wrap up your table conversations so that we can move on with our agenda. In the interest of time and in the interest of giving you an opportunity to enjoy some food and the beautiful views here, we are going to have you all wrap up your table notes and we will collect them and then compile them and share them out. But we are not going to have everyone stand up and report out table by table. So that should get us to lunch a little bit earlier, but not before we get to do one of the most important parts of today. And if you remember in our last session, I said things start with small ideas and they grow. Will, in his introduction this morning, said that the idea for this event came from a breakfast with our Congress member, Senator, I apologize. Guess you put a microphone in front of my face and I forget everything I'm going to say, with our senator. And we are very, very lucky to have Senator Ben Allen with us today. If you have worked in this space, if you are looking for opportunities to appreciate embodied leadership, to look at leaders who really understand, as we mentioned earlier, time and place. Senator Allen is a real leader in this space. Was president of the Santa Monica Malibu School Board for a period of time, lectured at UCLA, and in his role as an elected official has been a tireless advocate for people on the planet, doing really meaningful work around not only environmental protection and natural resource advocacy, but also climate change, and more recently, electoral reform. And so it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Senator Ben Allen.
Oh my goodness! Thank you so much. What a beautiful. I'm so happy when I come here. It's such a pretty place and a great example of the city taking advantage of this wonderful site to turn into something really beautiful. Is it possible to maybe turn this off, or maybe it just is that okay? Anyhow, thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm so excited to see. I see a bunch of friendly faces and people who've been working in so many different spaces that all intermingle. You know, architecture, planning, circularity, environmental work, home hardening. It's a lot of the work that we've been working on up in the legislature over the past few years. And I'm just glad to have you all here having these conversations, because I know you all care about some of the things I care a great deal about as well. And I'm hopeful that coming out of these conversations, to the extent that there are ideas and things that we can do at the state level, either things that are standing in the way of your ability to make progress, or new ideas that you might have to help the agenda, push the agenda forward, please let us know so we can do our work and make changes in legislation. You know, it is true, I am deeply committed to the broad agenda of circularity. It's been at the heart of so many of our bills that we've been working on over the past few years. Of course, we got SB 54 passed a few years ago, which is the big plastics circularity bill, which we're so excited about. Now we got to get the governor to implement it properly and all the rest, which is its own challenge. But you know, the whole idea of extended producer responsibility and trying to infuse that concept into so many aspects of our regulatory life and our economic life. The idea that right up until now, we have basically let companies push products out onto the market with no accountability associated with the end use of the product, right? So they get all the upside of putting cheap products out there, and we're all picking up the tab. Our cities are picking up the tab. Our ratepayers are picking up the tab. Our environment is being damaged as a result. They have the tools. They have more tools than we have, at least, in terms of designing their products in a way that will make it more likely for them to be collected, recycled, composted, reused. They have more tools at their disposal, certainly with regards to source reduction, the over-packaging that we see, the fact that we continue to turn to cheap, very damaging fossil fuel-based packaging alternatives instead of really good nature-based alternatives that are out there. Styrofoam is a great example, right? I mean, if you think about what is the purpose of styrofoam, usually it is simply to get your TV from the producer to the store to your house without getting dented, right? That's the goal. And just that one process, we produce this massive amount of styrofoam that ends up in the environment basically forever. You could wrap up your TV in blankets; it'll still do the same work. Of course, we're not going to do that. But I'll give you an example. There's some great innovative companies out there, and this is one of the cool things about being from California. It's our businesses that are oftentimes the ones who are asking these great questions and are coming up with new alternatives. There's a small company that's figured out a way to use shrimp shells and cornstarch and vinegar to create a foam that does all the work that styrofoam does without any of the long-term impacts. You could throw that piece of foam off of the pier and it'll be fully biodegraded with nothing unnatural within about 10-15 years. And again, it's a purely natural product. And yet people like this company, the folks at Cruise Foam it's called, we're never getting calls back from Target and from Best Buy and all the Walmart, et cetera, until we passed our bill. And then all of a sudden they're getting calls back, right? Because these companies know that they have to start to comply. We're trying to do a similar thing for EV batteries. Because actually, unlike plastic, there's a lot of value in these EV batteries. Plastic is hard to find an end use for. It's not that we can't do it, but there's not the money value proposition that there is with an EV battery, which is filled with lithium and cobalt and nickel and a bunch of other precious minerals, which, by the way, we end up having to spend a lot of money to mine in some areas with very dicey human rights records. And so, if we can find a way to make sure that we collect those EV batteries, it's also a lot easier to collect if you think about it. No one's tossing their EV battery out the window, right? Like they do with plastic water bottles. You shouldn't do that. But no one here does that. So we're working on that. We're working on solar panels, getting those collected and turned into another generation. We're working on textiles. And with the fast fashion world, we're working on food, and of course, we all know about all the challenges associated with composting. So there's a lot of work happening in this space, and I'm excited and proud to be a part of it. And I've worked with a number of you on it. We have to create more. Robert and I were talking. We got to create more accountability, to the system, so that the folks that are making claims about diversion are actually meeting those, actually living up to their claims. We also, of course, have to think more broadly about the new normal with regards to our environment. As we try to make our environment better, we have to recognize that our environment continues to strain under the yoke that we've placed upon it. And that, of course, if you look at the climate change and all that it entails, what it wrought upon us recently with the fires up in the Palisades. What we're going to continue to struggle with regards to sea level rise. We're going to have to be thinking about the way that we build homes and plan communities in new ways. And we're going to have to think much more deeply about home hardening, but also community hardening, and steps that we can take that will help to create a rebuild and a recovery that will make it much less likely for us to experience the sort of absolute catastrophe that we experienced here just a couple of months ago. And so there's a lot of work happening in that space up in Sacramento right now. We just passed a couple bills that are really focused on this question of home hardening. We also passed the big bond last year that I was the author of, Prop 4, $10 billion of climate resiliency funding on fire and water and biodiversity, et cetera. So there's some resources that are now coming down the pike that are going to help with this transition. We've got to think a lot about, we've been focusing a lot on decarbonization and the future use of natural gas in the region. And, what are our energy sources going to be? I think, back in the day, there was always an expectation that natural gas was always a necessary component to any kind of rebuild. But now that people are able to use fully electric, induction stoves and heat pumps, and there's a whole new set of needs that are no longer that render gas a little less necessary than before, and we should at the very least be thinking about ways to let people make that transition more easily if they want to, and indeed really ask questions about whether it's worth spending the millions and millions of dollars to reinstall expensive gas infrastructure for homes that might not need that use. I guess one of many things we're going to have to work on, especially in the wake of the disasters, regardless of where you stand on the issue of natural gas. I think one thing we'd like to see is perhaps a standard or regulation in place for fire shutoff valves. We require earthquake shutoff valves for gas lines, and fire shutoff tech exists, so we can start to. I guess the question is, can we start to adopt more of this technology to reduce the pollution of natural gas during major firestorms? Because this fire was so catastrophic, not just for the people who lived there, but also for our air quality. I mean, the amount of toxic fumes that we all breathed in the immediate aftermath of that fire was shocking. And all I can say is, next time there's a terrible fire that burns down a community, stay indoors. Pump your air filters as much as you can, or just get away, because it is. I mean, I'm a dad of 2 little kids, and I shudder to think of the air quality that we breathed in for the first couple of days. When there's terrible fires up in the woods, they are terrible, and we breathe in a lot of smoke, and it's not a safe thing. But that's at least organic material that's going up in flames. It's not a good thing to breathe in forest smoke. Don't get me wrong, but think about how much worse it is to breathe the smoke that was caused by a refrigerator burning to a crisp, or a car, or and you think about all the materials that are in a house that may be inert and safe if sitting properly up on the shelf, but that if burnt to a crisp are really problematic. And by the way, another one of our extended producer responsibility bills focuses on household hazardous waste. Because I think a lot of folks are not aware of how much danger exists in their home, and we're not doing enough to ensure that we're properly capturing this stuff and getting it into a proper waste stream, as opposed to entering into either the landfills or the recycling waste stream and effectively contaminating the rest of the waste stream. So that's another area of work. Another kind of interest of mine is adaptive reuse, and I will say it's appropriate that we're here. This, of course, is the site of the Marion Davies Mansion. This was William Randolph Hearst's mistress. and she was given this beautiful house here, which unfortunately is no longer here. Just to give you a sense of the grandeur, though, I think that was like the servants' quarters is the house that's over on the other side. And you can see how beautiful it is. This was where she lived. This is basically on the footprint. We've now been able to build a beautiful kind of, they call it the beach club for the rest of us here in Santa Monica, and turn that building into a wonderful space for meetings and history interpretation. But there's so much really great work. I mean, as was mentioned, this get together was inspired by a previous conversation that we had with the AIA, all of our architect friends. And I just want to personally, I want to see how exciting so much of the really great adaptive reuse work that's underway right now throughout the city. There's so many great buildings that deserve a second lease on life, especially with the changing economy and different work patterns. And to the extent that we can preserve and protect those buildings and turn them into something new. And there's been so many great projects I've seen up and down the region. And I just want to thank the AIA members and others who've been involved with those projects. They're a great way to keep us modernizing and growing as a society and as an economy, while also retaining some of that core heritage that makes LA so beautiful and special. And there's a whole bunch of bills that have been working on trying to make adaptive reuse more eligible for the affordable multifamily housing loan program, and making local affordable housing programs, basically making sure that adaptive reuse is incentivized or helped to be made eligible for those kinds of grants. So, and there's also a CEQA streamlining, or some actually an exemption, I think, now for adaptive reuse projects that the governor has been examining. So there's some interesting work happening there. CEQA exemptions are always a little complicated, and we're seeing some pretty aggressive bills making their way through the legislature on that topic. Some of which, quite frankly, go a little too far for me. But the flip side is, I think there's a really important conversation happening right now up in Sacramento about ways that we grow in a way that is transit oriented and jobs oriented. So. With that, I just wanted to say how excited I am to be here. I know we're going to be having a discussion, and I just want to make sure everyone knows that it is our job. I think a lot of times people sort of see the government as this crazy thing off on FAR. It's particularly crazy in Washington. When someone called me a member of Congress, I thought, oh God, that would really not good for my mental health. But I will say, I mean, our office, and I want to introduce Samantha, who's here from our district office. Sam is just one of a really fantastic team of public servants who work for you, both here in Los Angeles and up in Sacramento. And we are very open. It is our job to help our constituents, but also work on legislation. And again, if there are, I am excited about the conversations that I've been hearing about at your tables. And I'm hopeful that to the extent the law could be changed in ways to help advance our shared goals, we're really interested in being helpful in that effort. So I just want to put that out there and introduce both of us to you, so that in the coming year we can perhaps work together on our broader goals, which ultimately are all about trying to make sure that we grow in a way that centers sustainability. Again, I'm the dad of 2 kids, and I shake my head at times at what we're doing to this beautiful earth that we've been bequeathed, and it is up to us. It is others in the past have stood up for this earth and have done things that have protected precious spaces and fought for cleaner air. I mean, you think about the Clean Air Act. I mean, there was a time when you couldn't even see the Hollywood sign because the smog was so bad, and kids were growing up in South LA with literally half of the lung capacity versus kids in other parts of the country. And we knew the automobile industry didn't want any changes, but people got together and said, hey, you got to do better. You got to do better. We know you can do better because we know the technology exists for you to do better. And you know what happened? The automobile industry didn't go out of business. In fact, and certainly didn't help traffic. I mean, there's plenty of cars on the road, but those cars are burning much cleaner now than they ever were. And that's because people like us got together and said, this is ridiculous. We've got to change the rules. We know you can do better. And I'm just hopeful that if we continue to lock arms and really fight aggressively for more pro-circularity policies, people will see that it's not just beneficial for the environment, which of course is so important to all of us. It's also going to help create efficiencies that will drive down costs. And one of the major problems with our current system is that the companies that benefit from the status quo are able to charge less while externalizing the cost of their products and their business model onto everybody else in other ways. So everyone is spending more on higher rates for refuse collection, to city services, to be able to band-aid over the dysfunction that they're helping to exacerbate. And so at the end of the day, if we really want to talk about affordability, which is a really important conversation right now, a lot of people are struggling deeply based on the ever-increasing costs of living. So much of that affordability question comes down to the kinds of rates that we're charging people for their utilities, for their energy use, for all sorts of different rates that they have to pay. And it's about time that we bring the producers and the supply chain into the conversation in a very real way to create more functionality to the system and drive down costs for regular folks. So thank you so much for all your engagement and interest. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, well, Richard, I'm not following a former president, but again, following Senator. Soham, do you want to join me up here? So now Soham and I are between you and lunch. We'll be brief, but we just wanted to share just a couple next steps. So why don't you go ahead and...
Hi everyone, my name's Soham, like you're humming a song. I'm a sustainability consultant, but I'm also involved with Carbon Leadership Forum, one of the other teams that helped put on this event today. Super quickly, thank you. If you're not familiar, Carbon Leadership Forum is a nonprofit focused on helping reduce embodied carbon emissions in the built environment. It was brought up today. Yes, we're carbon nerds, but also we care about the environment writ large because everything's made out of carbon. We're super excited to have your engagement today at the tabletop discussions. We're definitely going to take the notes and process them, but we also want you to know this is not your only chance to engage with the really great ideas that were brought up today. Looking into the next year, what we're planning on doing is putting together these design charrettes or workshops that are going to help push even further the ideas that were brought up today. So if there was something you were super excited about that was talked about at that table, please make sure your name is on the note-taker sheet so we can follow up with you all. But we're looking to set up a series of events that will be a lot of fun design challenges, or we'll dig in deeper to questions of how do we match materials with people who have them to who need them, or even things as what is the best use or what is the most appropriate use for materials in our built environment. So know that the engagement doesn't end today, but we will continue to open up opportunities in the form of small design charrettes. And you will get more information about those soon, but we're looking to do them next year and hopefully engage an even larger audience in terms of professionals in both the built environment, but also generally with materials. And that's all for me. Thank you, Heidi.
So you've probably noticed the camera. We did record this, so we will be posting this on YouTube. So we will share that out. And if you have any friends that couldn't make it, please share the link with them. And yes, we will process the notes and share that out as well. But there are also so many voices that couldn't be in the room today. So we're planning to do some virtual events following up on this, and we'll get some dates to you. And if anyone would like to present and share your voice and your stories, please reach out to us because there's such incredible brain trust in this room. Incredible organizing group here, in particular Clove, who took care of so many details. But we pulled this together quite quickly, so if you want to get anything done, I recommend reaching out to the people up here because they do it and do it really gracefully. Please stay for lunch, but on your way out, please recycle these. We will reuse these. And then also we created these nice little zero waste bag with a custom circular SoCal label. You'll maybe notice some Santa Monica icons on the graphic that we created here. So yeah, I think, we have a low carbon, zero waste lunch for you. So please stay, please continue the conversations. And just thank you all so much. Appreciate all of you.